Thank you for joining us on TechMove. It is Rod Louie and Keith Moreau. And ladies and gentlemen, in typical TechMove fashion, we are going to be running an episode right now, which was done during the George Washington administration. And we will be running this because we've had this content sitting on our hard drives for who knows how long. We're not even sure if our guests are still alive at this particular point, but nonetheless, we think it's relevant to run anyway. Keith, why don't you give them a little background on that, would you?
Yeah. So this was the IBC 2017 show, which was recorded in mid-September of 2017, and as usual, I just have not got around to assembling this episode.
I will take
now.
partial blame to that. I've had a lot of things to do, like I don't know, really nothing like laying around watching television.
Yeah, lots
Really.
of Netflix binge watching. Yeah,
Exactly.
I know it's like. Yeah.
Exactly.
No,
so we apologize to you for putting this out so late. But I'm sorry, Keith. Go ahead.
No, just it's the thing is the stuff in here, the IBC stuff especially, is still relevant. We really talk about just one product, and that one product is just starting to ship now. So, and the other interview is just an interview, timeless interview that doesn't have an expiration date. So both.
In fact, who knows? We might run it in an episode like 5 episodes from now. So don't be surprised, folks.
Anyway, so don't worry about it. We're still current. We're still relevant.
Yes.
And just go ahead and have fun listening to it.
Exactly. So have a great time listening to episode 40 of TechMove. Here we go. Coming to you from high atop our studios in the San Francisco Bay Area, you're listening to TechMove. This is episode 40. In today's show, Keith reports from IBC 2017 from Amsterdam. We talk about Keith's latest hard drive disaster, and we also talk about Keith's latest project entitled Conversations with Caregivers. All that, plus so much more. Well, I'm Rod Louie, and with me is Keith Moreau. Get ready. It's time for another exciting episode of TechMove. Let's go! This is episode 40. We've made it to our 40th episode. Keith Moreau, this is Rod Louie. How are you?
I'm very good. 40. Wow, that's a long time. That's a long time.
Well, it is great when we put out about 3 episodes a year. So congratulations on making it to the 40th episode. Now,
Yes.
When we celebrate our 50th episode 5 years from now, I think that will actually deserve some sort of live remote somewhere where we'll actually have to be in the same studio together.
Yes, I think well, you know what? I think we're going to be on that, Virgin, space plane or something doing it.
We'll be on Mars. We'll be on Mars.
Yeah, that's it.
When we can afford our space travel. Yes, that will be that's how we'll celebrate the 50th episode of TechMove. Well, no, in reality, congratulations on making it to 40. It has been a fun ride, and ladies and gentlemen, wherever you listen to TechMove, whether it be here in the San Francisco Bay Area or in the greater United States, or on Mars, like we plan to do our 50th episode anniversary, we want to thank you very much for joining us all this time. And we've just had a ball doing it, and we thank you so much for joining along and putting up with the silliness that we try to put out every once in a while. Keith,
Yes.
another major thing that I want to draw your attention to about episode 40 here is that this is actually going to be one of the first episodes in one or two episodes that we've done where it kind of goes back to the regular TechMove format, meaning this isn't like NAB based or that other one that you just went to. I can't even remember what we just did.
Cinegear.
Cinegear.
That was the last one.
Right.
Yeah.
That was. I mean, the next one we're going to cover is I think the Grammy Awards and then the Oscars or something like that. But
maybe a pet show,
right?
The Westminster
right,
dog show,
exactly. But this is the actual first full episode that we'll do, kind of like back in studio with all of our listeners' favorite segments. So I'm quite excited to kind of get back into the swing of things, and for this 40th episode, I think an absolutely fabulous way to kick off this momentous occasion is to talk about something that we kind of were preparing in our, in our production meeting that we hold so regularly. The world famous, what would a TechMove episode be without a Keith Moreau disaster of some sort? I mean, really, that's really what the kids are tuning in to hear is, here we are, we're talking about tech, we're talking about all the latest, digital cinema gear that is out there. But why does one have to pass without a Keith Moreau disaster? And we do not fail you, ladies and gentlemen. Keith Moreau is about to share with us a fantastic thing that happened to him. I'm going to turn the mic over to Keith Moreau right now and let him share what has gone on. Keith, the floor is yours.
Okay, the floor is mine.
Yes.
Okay, so this is another one of those, what was it? Oh, I think I may have told you about it before, but just in passing. But this was when I was plugging too much stuff into my backup power supply. So I have this battery-powered backup power supply. I have two of them, actually. And they're both, I think they can only really do like 1,000 watts each.
Oh, right. Okay.
So once it gets beyond 1,000 watts, then they start beeping, and then, I didn't really know what happened after they started beeping because they seemed to be fine even after they started beeping. Like, I'm beeping because we're getting close, but everything's still good. Because I just plugged a bunch of stuff into one. I had a bunch of hard drives and other stuff, and this one, one was still okay. The other one was kind of on the edge, and I was doing a lot of processing. When it's strange, but when you actually use your computer for intense processing, the power load goes up. It actually uses more power.
Yeah, I have noticed, like, even when you're just like, I don't know, saving a file to the hard drive, it just seems to spike at that point, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just anything that's just using more power, especially doing like intensive CPU processing or even GPU processing. If you have both those things going together, like if you're doing a render or whatever, that's when it starts really. It can double the power usage of the computer. It's crazy. It can go from like 300 to 600 watts.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing, and you can see it because it's got a little watt meter on the front. That's what's kind of cool about the backup battery power supply. It actually shows you how many watts are being used by that power supply. So anyway, it had kind of beeped a little bit and then gone away, like it had kind of gone to the edge and then come back. And then one time I was doing this render. And and that means when you're rendering, like all your hard drives are being used, like all the media is being pulled from your hard drives and spit out to another hard drive to render it, the final render. And so everything's kind of in motion. Everything's being accessed, like files are open and closing and things like that. And so the beeping started, and I just went, I kind of want to finish this render. The beeping will be fine. It'll survive. And then it just kept. It's not like a beep. It's like beep beep beep. It's more like just a single beep that just is really piercing. It's like beep. And so, I can put up with the beeping. I'll just leave the room. So
Right.
So I kind of
can already tell this is going well. I can already tell.
Yeah, so I got the render going. It's like it's the progress. It's Adobe Media Encoder. The progress is 12 minutes left or something. So it's almost done. Leave the room. Come back. Everything's black. The screen's black. Computer's black. Hard drives are black.
No lights anywhere. No lights.
I think there is one light on the backup power supply. It says something like error or something like that. Something really bad. Like you're doomed. I don't know. It just there's something I don't remember. There's something on the LCD that you're really screwed or so. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was not good. So I went, oh great, okay. So I restart. I realized that was the problem. So I unplug a few things that are non-essential from this thing, and I restart the computer and everything. And one of the drives, it has that very, very hopeful message when it comes up. This drive cannot be read. Do you want to initialize it? and it's like my main. And it's a RAID 5. It's my internal RAID 5. It's the one that I use in my Mac Pro, where I have 4 of the drives working together. So there's four internal drive bays in the Mac Pro, and you can have them all working together to make one big drive. And also you can make it safer by making a RAID 5, which is it's got 3 drives worth of data spread across 4 drives. So if one drive goes down, like if one drive goes bad, it's not going to lose any data. If more than one drive goes bad, then that's bad. But so it's somewhat safe. It's a pretty safe configuration. Now this is during the peak of my business. I've been so busy this year, but I was especially busy between like the end of like mid-April till about August. It's just been crazy. Like I don't even know what happened. It's just like a blur. But so this is in the middle of this. This was a couple months into that. And so this drive, which I normally, I'm so, anal about backing everything up and have all these systems to back up and this and that, right?
You're a great guru on the backup front.
Yeah. But about a month prior to this happening, I did not back up that drive. And it was so stupid because that's actually I just didn't have time, because what happened was my backup server, which is an old MacBook Pro, mm-hmm. was starting to get really flaky. Like it was starting to just shut itself off and do weird things. And that was, everything was connected to that system. All my backup drives were connected to that system, and it went over the network, the WAN in my house, and goes to this closet with the backup server system. The backup closet the legendary backup closet.
Which I love so much. Yes.
Yeah. But for about a month, one drive, especially one drive on this backup server was not working. That was the backup to my main internal drive. So I had not backed it up in a month. And this drive was basically initialized. The one that was being used when the power supply choked. So it basically, yeah, so what I did was I tried to save it, and it was not savable. In fact, when I actually tried to even have like the whole system on, it would like crash my system. There was something between SoftRAID, which is the software that I use to make that RAID, and the fact that maybe there was some corruption on those drives that had been created during the power outage.
Right.
Somehow made it really, really hate my Mac, and my Mac hate it, and not want it to be in the system while other things were going on. So I had to actually physically take those drives out, and luckily I put them into another. I have another older Mac Pro. Mm-hmm. It's a 2008, and that's actually kind of a lifesaver. You should always have an extra computer that's almost identical to the main one that you use, because then you can like transfer stuff over and have work on that system, or have it doing stuff while you're still working.
Right.
So I took those 4 drives and put it into that system, and it kind of was able to kind of recognize it, like it was able to semi work, but not very well. and I'm still in the middle of all these projects. I had 4 projects going on at once, 4 different customers,
Oh,
4
wow.
different things, and they were all like midstream. They weren't finished yet. So, now luckily this drive, this kind of it's my main internal drive, and I use it for outputting renders, and I use it to store a lot of my large files and documents. It's kind of like my main drive where I have my home drive on it, like your documents folder on your Mac. That was kind of like, because having all that on your SSD, it's too much stuff.
Right.
So you keep your SSD kind of clear of that stuff, and you just keep apps and other things on that.
Yes.
And just keep it as your boot drive, and then you have this other drive as take all your documents and data and stuff is on that drive. So but it didn't really contain too much video, like video source material, like from shoots. I keep that on separate drives.
Okay.
But this drive, that was good. But this drive specifically had, because it was pretty fast. It was it went about 400 megabytes per second because of the RAID with fast drives. So I did it when I needed speed, but large file speed and a lot of storage. So it had lots of my Premiere Pro projects on it. And and it also had a lot of my final renders for things, which I can always regenerate. That part's okay if I don't have those. But if I'm missing those the Premiere Pro projects, then I'm kind of like dead. I'm a month behind if I don't have those.
Oh no.
Yeah. And pretty much, well, here's was my saving grace for most of those projects. If you're anal in so many different ways, then maybe one of those other anal ways will save you. If if you forget to be anal in one way, the other way of being anal saves you, and that kind of saved me. So at least with all the projects except for one project, I had done autosave every 5 minutes, which is annoying because every 5 minutes your sequence your work on your sequence kind of stops while it saves, and then you resume. But I had so many crashes in the past, like in the middle of important stuff, that and sometimes I just forget to hit the save key, the hotkey, that I just programmed it to every 5 minutes do an autosave with Premiere Pro, because it's just so flaky and crashy. So, yeah. So luckily, and the thing is, and here's a strategy for people out there: don't ever autosave to the same drive that your main project's on. So your master project, the one you're really working on, keep it on one drive, and then keep your autosave version of that project on a different drive. That way, that way, if your main drive goes down like it did here, you have a 5-minute-old backup on a different drive. That's just a perfect duplicate of it. So luckily, with all the projects I had except for this one, I was autosaving on a different drive. So I was kind of saved there. Whew.
Wow.
But for one project I did, and I had to deliver something like the next day or like in 2 days. But then luckily, I guess I'm kind of anal about backup, so I have backup to Backblaze. And Backblaze was backing up that internal drive all the time. So in actuality, I had a backup of that drive that was really recent, because Backblaze had been backing it up the whole time. Even that whole month, it had still been backing up that drive. So even though my main local backup drive was a month old, and I still had a very current version of all the files in the cloud. Now getting all those files from the cloud, it's a lot of data to your local system is challenging.
Yeah.
In various ways, I was actually able to kind of recover. I was able to get all the data that I needed from various sources, from, for example, this other drive that had the backup autosaves. And then eventually I was able to kind of get this original RAID to limp along on my other Mac for a while, kind of limping, and I was able to extract a lot of the stuff. Basically, I just did a search for anything that was between the current time and a month ago,
right? And
I was able to find all those files, and then I was able to save those in a separate area and this is my most recent files. This is the last month that I've been working. It actually wasn't that much. It was only like 200 gigabytes of data It wasn't like a huge amount.
Right.
It was kind of manageable.
Right.
It was just, the fact that it was very important data. So, and then I was also able to tell Backblaze to back up all those files too, and to restore them. And that was kind of an experiment too, to see how much data I could actually restore with Backblaze. And you can do a lot with it.
Yeah.
What you do is you tell it to back up, and then it takes a while. It takes several hours maybe to create a zip file, and then you download that zip file. And the zip file is huge, and it takes a long time. You have to have a pretty fast internet to do it that way, but it worked. So
that's a very, very interesting thing. Semi-related, but not really. When you're done with a project,
yes,
how do you deliver the finished product to a client?
For the most part, it's all internet, final YouTube quality videos. So sometimes they'll want to put it up on YouTube themselves, like they'll have their own YouTube. Well, in fact, most of the time they have their own YouTube access.
Right.
So all along, what I'm doing is I'm giving the clients kind of like previews of the final product on my own YouTube in a unpublished link.
Mm-hmm.
So I just give them a link to the YouTube. Nobody else has it. They can share it with their friends. It's easy. They don't have to log in and stuff, but it's kind of a unique URL. So you're never going to stumble on it if you're just the public. And then they look at it and they finally approve it. And I said, and they say, yeah, it's ready to go. And then I upload either through Google Drive or through Dropbox a much higher bitrate file that they can then upload to their YouTube or wherever they want to put it.
So this is all via digital files that they get a final product on.
Yeah, but it's only the final edited final product that I give them. I don't give them unless there's something in the contract beforehand, like if they want to have the media so they can deal with it later. Mm-hmm. And I usually charge them a premium to do that because I don't want to be just like the person that shoots all the stuff and then they hire another editor to put it together.
Right.
And some companies have done that. And I actually now I put in the contract, because every company I have an agreement before we start. Sometimes it's really simple and sometimes it's really complicated. Mm-hmm. It can be like a huge legal contract and sometimes it's like one page.
Right.
And sometimes it's just verbal, if it's simple and small enough. But usually it's written, and in there it says, if you want the footage, you have to pay me a lot of money to get the footage.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like the way old photographers used to do it, right? When they used to shoot weddings or whatever it was, they would, take the shots, on film, right? Mm-hmm. And they would never give you the negatives.
Yes.
Unless you paid big buckaroos for those negatives, and even at that, they really didn't want to do that ever, because they always want you to buy the prints through them, the enlargements through them, so on and so forth. So kind of along the same line, I guess.
Yes, it definitely is. It's very similar to that, and it's very understandable because you put all this work into schlepping all your stuff to record something and doing it really well, and you want to reap the benefits of that in the future. Because you're thinking you're going to get paid in addition to the schlepping and shooting of the stuff, you want to get paid for the editing and final product. And so it's not really right for them to want to reuse your stuff and not use you. Well, unless they pay you.
That, and is there also a little bit of the creative thing in you where you don't want what could be, somebody's, 9-year-old kid importing your high quality professionally shot stuff and then just editing it on like iMovie or something, or on his iPhone or something?
No, not really. I don't care about that. Yeah. But if they pay me enough, they can do whatever they want with it.
Sure.
No, it's a little bit like it depends on the project.
Yeah.
Some of them are passion projects and you definitely don't want people to do it. Sometimes it's just that wasn't the deal. That wasn't and it's really funny. This has actually happened to me a couple times. Like I'll do this project and then something will happen in the middle of the project. Like the person that originally hired me quits or gets fired. Mm-hmm. This actually happens a lot. Mm-hmm. like one time I was doing this project and we had just shot something. I had probably done about, a day's worth of work, which is significant. And I like emailed them, okay, I was not like super raring to finish it because I was so busy. I was kind of waiting. Usually the client's the one that's pushing you. It's not the other way around. It's not like, hey, what's going on? I want to finish this project. It's more like the other way around where the client's going, okay, what's going on? But they weren't doing that. And so I kind of said, okay, I'm free now. Let's do the next stage. And there was just silence.
Yeah.
Like crickets. And so then I emailed everybody I knew at that company. And then one of the people that was still there said, oh yeah, that division got closed down. And so then I texted a couple of them that had their like cell phones, their personal cell phones, and said, hey, what's going on? And they said, oh yeah, we got laid off. And they said they decided to take the company in a different direction. And
awesome.
Yeah. So meantime, I'm like here with, like, okay, so I did all this work. Am I going to get paid?
Right.
And and the person that I had contacted said, yeah, no problem. If you have, just send us an invoice or whatever. And I was just so busy that maybe a month and a half went by.
Mm-hmm.
And in that month and a half, other things had happened in the company, and I was no longer able to even like send an invoice and get paid
because they all moved out and ran away from all their creditors, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So just send those invoices early. That's another lesson.
Right.
Never.
That's another lesson, kids. Do your billings early, please. Do your billings early.
And so that kind of ties back into the original disaster story, which is, I didn't want to take the 2 to 3 hours to fix my backup system.
Right.
To make it totally reliable. I was like always just putting it off. Oh, this is super reliable. It hasn't failed me in a long time. It's okay. It's cool. I can't afford to take the 3 hours because I really am really busy. Mm. And the thing was, it actually probably took me 10 hours to recover from that. So it was not a good investment to put it off. So don't put off backup. That's the lesson, I think.
Well, very valuable lesson. And I think it's going to segue quite nicely, because not only are we, have we picked up some great hints about, how to plan your backups a little bit differently, but with this, I'd like to kind of move on to the project that I'm very excited to talk about. One of your latest projects.
Oh yeah.
And that's and I'll let you kind of speak on it.
Sure.
But what if this new project that we're about to talk about, what was part of this deal, or was it a part of this whole disaster that occurred?
It was, it was, I was taking a slight hiatus from it, and luckily I was just so lucky that everything I had done was just a little bit over a month old with this project. I was going to restart it like the next day, but I hadn't done anything for about a month, and it was still a little bit before that first backup, or when the backup system was stalled. So I didn't lose anything from that project at all. Everything was fine.
But it could have easily been a ultra disaster, because this is a really big project we're about to kind of begin with here.
Yeah, it could have been really disastrous, and that was like the first thing I looked for. I said, when was my last delivery to them? So I looked, I sent a draft version of some of the videos to them over a month ago, and that's when I had last backed up. So I knew I was okay. I was okay, great. So I've got all the sequences, I've got all the media, so I'm good on that. So yeah, that was the first thing, because that was the most important project.
Yeah.
By far of all of them that I was working on.
So let's talk about this, this project, this this latest and greatest from Keith Moreau. I'm gonna share that the project name is Conversations with Caregivers. Keith, let's kind of talk about the project as a whole. What was it about? What was the setting? Give us a brief summary for our audience out here.
Well, sure. So I've been I've had this relationship with UCSF in San Francisco, and they have a world class. It's probably one of the top. It's probably the top memory and aging teaching and clinical facilities like in the world. And it's actually right here in San Francisco in Mission Bay Center. They have a huge campus. It's beautiful and all new buildings and lots of people. There's probably like 300 to 500 people involved there. So there's a lot. So there's a lot of professors, and then there's fellows, and then there's all these different. All of them are doctors, have doctorate degrees and of different types, and they're all very smart people. And they're all working together to doing research on how to diagnose and how to possibly cure dementia, especially in memory and aging, and in older people.
Yep.
It happens with younger people too, but mostly in older people. Like Alzheimer's is a really common one, but there's tons of other disorders that are also considered dementia.
Absolutely.
Anyway, yeah. So I did projects here and there with them for the past couple of years, and a couple of years ago I was actually the helmet artist for UCSF, and because of that I was really exposed to that organization, and then whenever they wanted to produce a video, they would say, "Hey Keith, can you do this?" And we talk about it, and I produced several videos for them, and then they asked me to do this really big project called Conversations with Caregivers. At the time we didn't really have a name for it, but we knew they were going to try to it was kind of going to be like how-tos about how caregivers of people with dementia, it was going to be how-tos for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you're the child of, say, your parent is older and they start getting dementia and you wind up taking care of them, it would be like hints for you to how to take care of them.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and what to look for, how to handle things.
Yeah. How to
Yep.
avoid certain things. And
Sure.
And yeah. And so we started with all these meetings, and there's probably like 6 months of meetings before any footage was shot. And we're talking about hour-long meetings like every week, if not longer. So that's a lot of meetings. It was like maybe, dozens of meetings. But we had kind of an idea. We started having an idea of what we want to do, and then eventually we got candidates for families that were willing to be filmed, and another deal is that I personally want to maybe make a documentary about all this as well. So I got rights to use the footage for my own documentary. So that worked out really well too. So we went into these people's homes, and we interviewed them, and then we also went to different sites like events that they would go to, or different activities, and filmed whatever they were doing there. And eventually it turned into 10 videos with these 3 different families about how they care for their person with dementia.
How long were each of these videos? I'm sure they varied in length, but give me a rough average.
The shortest one's probably about 5.5 minutes, and the longest one's about 15.
Okay.
So they're like little films.
Right.
I mean, if you add it up all together, it's longer than a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of output.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they have to be kind of self-contained, so it's even more work than maybe a longer form. And also, but the thing that's kind of interesting is that it wasn't really very scripted. We had some questions, but mostly it was just filming them and then extracting different categories, and not trying to force them into a particular area too much. Because
letting it evolve naturally, type of thing.
Yeah. Let them talk about what was important to them and what they felt close to. Like sometimes some things we'd ask them and they wouldn't have experienced it, so they couldn't answer. Like, no, I don't have any extra information there. I can't talk about that, but I can talk about this. Something maybe we didn't think about. So all the shooting, it lasted. Well, I started shooting in April of 2016, and I finished shooting in July of 2017.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a long assignment that you put yourself through.
It was long, but it was worth it. And all these people I'm really good friends with. They're wonderful people, willing to share what they what they think works with the world, and devoting their time, because it was a pain to have this crew go into their homes and
very disruptive. And for and let's face it, you and I do have experience with this type of disease, right? And and so with that, a lot of the care that goes in is structured care. It should be repetitive. It should be the same thing over and over again, just to not disrupt the person being cared for. And when you got bringing our 12-foot light bar and our sliders and our jibs all over the place, that can be a little disheartening, I would imagine.
Yeah, and megaphone. Do it again. Do it again. You didn't do it right.
When you have to spray down the street in front of the house with water, then it's a little disruptive, I gotta imagine.
No, actually, so one of the things that I really tried to do was go small, as not super small, but very as minimally. And if you watch the behind the scenes stuff, which you will eventually, and probably the world will eventually, you'll see it's a pretty small setup. It was just 3 small
ultimate run and gun type of thing.
It wasn't some of it was run and gun, which was just basically me and an A7R. Just following people around. That was the most minimal setup. Sometimes I'd use a gimbal, but mostly it was just me with a little rig that I use, the steady stick thing.
Yep.
That I have, and but there wasn't a lot of that. No, it wasn't. But I guess run and gun, to me, run and gun implies you're walking around with a camera. No, this was like setting up at people's homes, but it was small tripods, small cameras, not too many lights. If there were microphones, very lav mics that were unobtrusive, or a mic that was off to the side, no boom mics, nothing weird like that. The only time we did boom mics was maybe for some of the single interviews, because it worked out. But then the person with dementia wasn't necessarily involved with that. But so I used so the main camera I used for sound, because it has good XLR inputs for good mics, was the Sony FS5. And I actually shot all of it in S-Log2. So I'm actually kind of in love with S-Log2. They say that it's not really good for 8-bit cameras, which all these were at this point. But it's true. It's not good for 8-bit cameras, and it's potentially noisier than regular non-S-Log standard stuff. But I really love the look when you overexpose a little bit, like 1 to 3 stops overexposed, and then you bring it down in post with the LUT. With the LUT that reverses that, and you'll see when you see some of them, the colors, and it looks like film. It's really it looks really, really good. So, and I was able to even get that with the FS5, which is not as good as the A7 S2 R2 in image quality, but if you overexpose it a bit and you use a really good lens, you can get good stuff out of it. And this is all just with 100 megabit 4K.
Now, we've been using that technique for a number of years now, right? Overexposing by a couple of clicks and then dialing it back in post. We've been doing that for a while, have we not?
Yeah, it's something that I've been doing ever since I've been using S-Log, especially with lower end cameras, because they just don't have very good noise performance at the low end. When you don't have a lot of light in the shadows, they're really noisy. And then S-Log kind of emphasizes that noise. So what you do is you overexpose them a little bit, and then you kind of crush the black. So you bring all that noise down to nothing in post, and it doesn't look like it's really crushed, because everything's so overexposed, but you have a lot of latitude with S-Log. And the highlights aren't always that important anyway. So you'll see in these videos the highlights are kind of blown out and stuff, but it's a really nice blowing out. It's not super harsh. It really rolls off the edges of things where it goes from blown out to not blown out is pretty nice with S-Log2, I found, with these sensors. All of them work pretty well with that. I've had other cameras where the edges between blown out and not blown out was terrible. It looks like a really sharp edge.
Right.
But in the case of these cameras in this setting, it looked really, really good. So yeah, I just used minimal lighting. I used my little Flex, my Westcott Flex LEDs for the most part, and just very natural lighting. Like I would only just use them to maybe bounce against a wall, or put them behind a really big diffuser, like a one-stop diffuser.
Mm-hmm.
If they were, a lot of them were backlit, so I'd have to give them some front light. But then just blow out the background if necessary, just to get them to be exposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and I used and just tried to get natural look as possible. There were some problems in some areas. I had to fix some kind of mistakes in either focusing or just. There was one situation where one of the guys his skin complexion was a little bit darker than everybody else, and he was right in a window. So, like, if you look at the original footage, he just kind of looks like a silhouette.
Oh, okay. Those are tough. So
yeah.
It's real backlit type of thing.
Really backlit, and also very kind of washed out, because when you're a lot of lenses, it's just inevitable. Lenses in the camera will, if you're looking right into a light, it will tend to wash out dark objects that are in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot less detail in there than normally would be, and it kind of makes them seem kind of soft and out of focus because of that.
Right.
So yeah, so there are a couple parts that were really problem areas for me. So I actually painstakingly went in there and did a bunch of movie magic to get that to look better. You wouldn't believe what I did on this one guy's face. So what I did, I'll just describe it briefly. You can set up this tracking in Premiere Pro, so you can kind of make an outline. So I set up an outline of just his facial features. It didn't really matter if his head, the edges of his head were in focus. What was really important was his nose and his eyes.
Sure.
And his mouth. Those had to be kind of in focus. And so I set up tracking just for those areas, so that the only thing that I would sharpen was those areas, just inside his face area.
Right.
Inside his face area. And then I just bump up the sharpening on that. And then I make the edges kind of soft so that it wouldn't be super sharp. And then kind of like if somebody was just like wearing a mime's mask,
Right.
You wouldn't want to see that edge where it's
Sure.
super sharp. So
Sure.
you kind of blur, you can soften the edges with the software. But then all this noise would come up, right? Because you're sharpening all the noise as well.
Right.
And he's already kind of shadowy anyway, so there's a lot of noise in there. So then I have to use something called Neat Video, which is a noise reducer software. And what it does is it analyzes the noise patterns of whatever camera or scene that you have, and it kind of counteracts it. It puts reverse noise in there,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually takes the noise away magically, but it's also super processor intensive and has a tendency to want to crash Premiere Pro. But
on top of what it wants to do, crash already.
yes.
Right.
So this is an example of how kind of to fix, and also maybe I wasn't like perfectly in focus all the time.
Right.
I was running 3 cameras mostly by myself, and sometimes one would be slightly off just because I was, didn't have time to, or maybe just got off on its own.
Sure.
And so yeah, you can if you know what to do, you can actually kind of create miracles in post. So you should look at it and see what you think of those shots.
I am definitely going to look at that, because I think that could be a separate segment that we should talk about on TechMove.
Yes.
On its own, because that's my thing is I'm usually out of focus when I think I'm in focus. So that would be actually quite a handy little thing for me to learn.
Speaking of focus,
yes,
I know we have to go, but we should kind of just save this thought, because the camera, we're going to talk about the C200, but we can't talk about it now because it's almost time to go.
Right.
But one of the reasons that I'm getting the C200 is because it has amazing autofocus.
That's what I've heard.
Yes.
Let's save that for the next segment. Because we're going to get into the tech and the new toys and stuff like that. And I think that would be exciting to kind of talk about, because of course I'm still hooked on my A6500 and still haven't purchased one. But we got to talk about this. So
we got to talk about it.
Let's do this, Keith. Let's hit the pause button here, because we have been recording now for over 40 minutes.
Oh, that goes by quick.
Right. Things go by quick when you're having fun.
At least for us.
Right,
exactly. The audience.
And so we'll reset, because I'm sure your backups are going to fail right now anyway.
my it's starting to beep. Starting to use some power.
Absolutely. So let's let the hamsters take a little rest in the exercise wheel, and we will come back and continue on with our discussion. Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay, folks, we're going to come right back with more of TechMove. So we have a special surprise for you here on TechMove. It is Rod Louie and Keith Moreau here, and we are going to be sharing with you a interview that Keith was able to get with the folks over at Aputure, and specifically with a Martin Longolo. Longolo.
I think so.
See, so
yeah,
my phonetic spelling didn't help me at all. So anyway, so Keith, Aputure, they put out a lot of stuff. What kind of drove you to want to see them at the IBC 2017?
So I was very, very interested in this COB light, which stands for chip on board. They're lights that are just a single source point of an LED, but super bright. So that little, like the 1.5 inch kind of diameter disc, puts out a ton of light. And Aputure was actually one of the first to market with another one called the 120D. And this is kind of a bigger version of it. It's probably about 1.5 times physically bigger, and it's about 2.5 times brighter.
Oh, okay.
So that's called the 300D. And because I've been doing a lot of situations where I'm just lighting with a lot of heavy backlight behind people, like in front of windows and skyscrapers and stuff like that. And I just do this all the time. And I've been kind of taking a long time to set up just a really powerful amount of lights with my really great Westcott flex lights.
Yeah.
But they're just to put each one. I have about 10 of them. But each one, is individually about 250 to 500 watts in power.
Okay.
So in order to get enough power out of those, I've got to make about 4 of those to really combat the light with a huge softbox I have. It's like a 5-foot square softbox.
Okay.
You kind of have to have a big room for the softbox. So the whole thing is kind of tedious to set up, because I've got to use Velcro on these things that are a part of the Westcotts to Velcro onto this Westcott frame that I have, and then put that inside this big softbox, and then kind of I'll adjust it, and it's a little kludgy in a way.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of Velcro and extra work, and I've got to plug all the 4 Westcott lights in and all that. But I don't want to get like a 4x4 or 2x2 Westcott, which would be the same thing, because they're super expensive and limited in portability, really, because then the whole thing's bigger. Like the tube that you have to, even if you roll it up, you have to carry a 2-foot long roll of Westcott LED.
Right.
So
right.
So yeah. So I was just thinking about, okay, and then this 300D came out, and I just thought, once that comes out, I'm probably going to get that, because that's just like super quick to set up. You just have this one monolight, plug in the AC, and then I got this Westcott quick softbox, which has this Bowens mount on the front, so it's just a little bayonet that it clicks on, and it's like an umbrella and just snaps on. And it actually only takes 30 seconds to set up instead of 20 minutes. So
oh wow, yeah, that's a big time saver.
Yeah, it's a super big time saver, and I could just devote more time to aiming it and really getting the shot right, instead of just getting the thing to actually built and work on site.
Right.
So anyway, so this was before that the Aputure light was even out, but I'd been lusting after it for months. Like I even talked about it in the Cinegear interview, which was like 4 months before. So it was just about to come out, and so I went to the Aputure booth at IBC. They're an international company, so they're all over, and I think they're also based out of China, or at least part of their company is. But the guy that I talked to before, Ted, actually wasn't there. He was setting up their party that evening.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this other guy named Martin Longolo, who turned out to be kind of a comedian, so we had a great little routine going. And not a comedian, but he's a very funny, witty guy, and we kind of joked about his name and other stuff related to, we had this, well, you'll hear it, and then we could talk about the interview after the interview. Oh, another thing, there were technical difficulties. So whenever you're recording on an iPad, make sure you don't run out of space, like you don't run out of memory on the iPad when you're recording it.
Kind of hard to do, though, I would say. That's kind of tough.
It's not, well, it's tough if you don't check it beforehand.
Right.
Just check to see how much memory you have left or how much recording time you have left. So what happened was, in the middle of the interview, Veronica's recording it, and she's kind of like waving to me, and I'm going, "Hi, Veronica," and probably we should have just stopped it then, and I should have deleted some other stuff off the iPad.
Right.
But I didn't, and so what happened was, it just the memory ran out kind of right at the end of the interview, but it was enough to kind of corrupt the file. So it cut off the last minute of the interview. And it also screwed up the sync of the video and audio. So the video is, except for the first 5 minutes, the video is kind of unusable because it's kind of jerky and out of sync. So that's why we're just making this an audio the whole show an audio podcast instead of video and audio.
Great.
Because of this and just other reasons that the video wasn't superb.
So the tech move, the tech of TechMove again strikes. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Boneheaded errors like check how much recording time you have left on your device before you start recording.
That
don't let it run out in the middle.
Right.
And then also learn that if you do run out in the middle, the iPad does not save files gracefully. It doesn't go, I'm almost out of space. Maybe I should just save off this file before I actually run out of memory to do anything else with whatever I'm doing computing wise. It's not smart enough to kind of predict. I better save 5 megabytes of space for other things.
Right. No,
like saving the file.
It's just going to cut off. That's all it does.
It just goes, I'm done, and I don't have memory to do anything else. Right. Sorry, right. Your file's screwed.
Right.
So
fantastic. Great.
Don't do that.
Great. All right. Well, let's get to it. This is again Martin Longolo from Aputure, and talking to our very own Keith Moreau at the International Broadcasting Convention, IBC 2017, and we'll come back right after this interview.
Is that fine? You can skip the Langelo and then...
Martin, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you want to put it in there?
It doesn't matter. What is it?
You can make it Langelo, I think. Langelo.
How do you spell it?
Longolo.
Longolo?
Longolo.
Longolo.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Longolo. I think I could do. No, I think I could do. I'm going to try it.
Okay, you want to try it?
Hi, this is Keith Moreau here with TechMove, and I've got Martin Longolo. I got it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we were pretty close. It's Martin Longolo. It's a little village in Holland. Nobody knows about it.
Wait, you're a village?
Well, I could be this village. And the history is fairly interesting because there was this guy and he went off with another woman and then he had to invent a new surname. Yeah. But we're not here for this, right? Yeah.
So we know all about Martin's heritage, the fact that one of his ancestors did something bad and had to change the whole town's name, but that's okay. We're going to actually talk about a product today, a product by Aputure. And I'm actually personally really excited about this product because it's a super bright monolight, and it is probably the brightest thing, I think, brightest LED even produced right now, right?
Well, this is the brightest light we produce. And this would be then, people like always to compare it to tungsten, but it would be a 2K. And I don't know if you ever carried one of these. But
2K, they're gigantic.
It's heavy. And, why don't you just take it off? And then I give it to you and you tell me what you think of the weight.
It's like, it weighs pretty much nothing. I think it weighs maybe 4 pounds.
Yeah, I don't know. I can keep this in my arm all day without getting tired. And that's actually now with an accessory on top. And if I take this off, and I always take this off really quick like that, and that is because you maybe are familiar with this mount.
I think this is a Bones mount.
It is, indeed. They're not there anymore, but a lot of their accessories still are. And that means that if you have some accessories yourself, you can just use them on these lights. And if you don't, we have some for you. And it's really quick to change. So I have this one, it gives you a 60-degree beam. But if I want to change it to something else, there you go. Pop it on, and you're ready to go.
Is this a Fresnel?
This is a Fresnel, and what it does indeed is concentrate your beam all the way. I don't think you can read it, but it says 12 degrees, up to 45. Oh, sorry, that's 42, really.
That's 42.
Yeah. So in the background here, we have something you would always use if you want to have a nice soft light. And maybe you have it yourself. Maybe if you don't, we sell it for you as well. Because, we like to emphasize. You can use your own accessories. Just buy our light. So about the light, right? It's off right now. And I'm not sure if it's safe, but let's just first point it down. And then put it all the way up. Can I point it, you think, at the camera? Yeah? Okay, so there you go. I'm bringing it up now all the way to 100%. And she doesn't look too happy at this moment. What would you think?
Okay, then that's good. We've proven our point.
So a light is not only about giving a lot of light, right? But you want to have accurate light. Because you don't want to look like an alien. You don't want to look all green and messed up, right? So the CRI of this light is 96. And even all the other lights we're having here are above 95. Some of them even 97. So let's say I take you out to the forest and we're going to play this scene and we have some light. And we need a lot of light. So then normally if you want to bring 2K, you need to bring either a generator or it'd be difficult to bring that in the forest. Now you can just put on 2 big batteries here and you have your light in the forest. Nice.
So I have a question. Is this all that connect to this thing?
If you want to work from a battery, all you need is this controller and 2 big batteries. You need big batteries, 230 watt at least, because this draws quite some power. And actually it's 300 watts per hour. That's a 300D. That's why, 300D.
And what if you want to AC power this?
Yeah, you could, of course. All the way on the bottom, you can, find, all the things you need to put it, what is it called, a power box? Yeah, so you can just pop it in and you will have light all day.
So if I want to AC power, do I need this and then whatever is that on the floor?
Yeah, you do. It's one complete system. And if you look at this control box, there's one thing more, I haven't noticed it, but there's this small antenna, right? So let's say you are working and you put all your 5 lights and you're behind your camera and you find out that one light needs to be a little brighter and you need to walk over there. Well, you don't have to. Remote from us. And you can divide into here channels and groups. So you have 3 channels, 4 groups for all your needs to separate the lights if you want to. And you can dial in brightness or even color temperature if you buy one of our bi-color lights.
So how does it communicate with whatever is controlling it?
Yeah, because you don't want to be, working around something which is in the way. So now it works on a 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection. So you can just be anywhere, and if you press the button, it should just work fine.
Do you have an example of that remote?
Shall I get it for you?
That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay, I have one here. It's you get one, by the way, with every light you buy. People tend to lose them. I did myself. But after a while, you got enough spare ones. And they're all the same. So I put this on. Let's point it up. And now I choose group A, right? So now in mode, I can press this button. And now it's on channel 1 and A. And now it goes on and off. Is it visible? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there you go. Your light is on fire now. You see? Yeah.
Can we dim them or just turn them on and off?
No, if you can see it here, there is a minus, and this is a D. So if this would be a bi-color light, you can also change the color temperature with the button underneath.
And so you just assign this to a channel, and then this particular remote works with it.
Exactly. You decide in which channel this light should work, and then you can also divide it in different groups. Yeah.
So, Martin, have you actually used this light in your cinematography work?
this one is new for me as well. So I haven't used the 300D, but I am familiar with a 120. And I started out with the Lightstorm panels, the all small LEDs. And they were really nice for me. But the one thing with all those small LEDs, they all cast their own shadow. And this is a single source light. So if you put it on someone and it casts this shadow, then you only have a nice harsh shadow, what you would expect from a single source light. So it looks just, better. And actually, to be honest, if you want to buy a light, this is a little less portable because you need to bring those 2 big batteries. So for normal use, I'm just really, really happy with my 120. But then in this case, that you need a lot of light for a big green screen, then I would definitely, put this up. But remember that you need those really 2 powerful batteries for it.
Right. I'm competing with the sun a lot. I shoot sometimes with a lot of backlight, scenes that are really well lit, maybe inside a building and then looking outside. So something like this kind of appeals to me, to just produce a lot in a small, easy to move around package.
Yeah, that's what it's for. If you need a lot of light.
So tell me a little bit about your history.
I started out as an independent filmmaker, right? And then there is this moment you buy your first camera, which comes pretty quick because the first thing you need is a camera. And then I started looking for some affordable lights. And when I did my research, I went on YouTube, I went on the forums, and then people all talked about Aputure. So then I started buying my first lights, which were the really flat Lightstorm panels. And because I work also a lot of times alone and I have to move fast, that's the one I went for. And I could put them in a small box and bring them with me and just put them on a tripod, put an umbrella in front of it, and start shooting. So now, when I start to grow and, bigger cameras and everything, I still have these jobs. So I always like to have my own small portable set because that's what Aputure's target group is. People who work fast, want to have affordable, good quality light. We are for those filmmakers. But if you want to go a little bigger, then, you have your own gaffer bringing in the truck and all the big guns. But Aputure, I think, is really lean and mean, I would say.
So what type of stuff do you do?
I mostly now shoot commercials, and everything I do goes on social. So, people ask me, where is your last commercial? Where can I find it on television? I don't do that at all. No, I would say 99% goes on the social network. And then I shoot for, it's very broad. I shoot for only agencies, production companies, and it goes from Seat and Peugeot, who everybody knows, to the, corporate companies here in Holland and over the world, actually. I just came back from a nice job at a tropical island. It was really bad. Yeah.
So are you from Amsterdam or this area? Yeah.
I live right next to Amsterdam in Haarlem. And I moved there because it's all the way on the other side of the country where my family comes from. Like, remember from the beginning, pretty bad name there. So, yeah.
Had to escape his hometown. So this is great. Okay, now here's the $1 million question. Can I buy this now?
You can buy this now, but okay, we have now, and I know I can say the number. We have 400 units now ready to ship.
Wait, 4 units?
400 units, yeah. 400 units ready in a warehouse, and they are shipping now to dealers the 1st of October. So in the Netherlands, the expectation is that you can get them in your house by the end of October. And at this moment, we're working on a second batch. And we expect them, of course, to sell out really quick, but we don't really know. So we see how it goes.
Can I buy some from that company down there?
Well, you can definitely buy something from that company over there because we have now offices not only in China, but we also have a headquarter here in Amsterdam. Contact now us here in the Netherlands.
And I think for one of these, although that also makes a lot of sense. It's just, I don't know, I think I want like the biggest and brightest thing.
Yeah, you can always bring it down. It's really hard to create light which is not available to you, so yeah.
Well, this is really cool. I'm really happy about this. I'm excited about this light. I'm excited to have met you and heard about I'm not so excited about your hometown heritage and all that, but in fact, I'm going to be getting out here quick before his relatives come. But it's been really nice meeting you, and you're a great guy, and I really appreciate the time.
All right, thank you very much. And now we finally get our beer because it's almost on the end of the day, right? Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to end our TechMove official interview. This is Keith signing off for TechMove 2017, but keep it rolling because I want to get some of Martin's takes on his really awesome Blackmagic Cinema Pro or 4K, whatever he has.
You tried there pronouncing it correctly. I really admire this as a Canon user. But let's put it like this. Officially, it's the Blackmagic Ursa Mini 4.6K EF.
EF?
Yeah, it's an EF mount.
Oh, okay.
PL mount too, right?
So, I actually own a Blackmagic Ursa Mini, but
You do?
yeah, I do. I own the 4K, not the 4K 4.6K.
Does it look purple to you? That's the first thing people ask me.
Not especially purple. It doesn't look as good as the 4.6.
No, I have never used a 4K, but I have to say that when I meet people, the first thing they ask me is like, "Oh, are you still having issues? Because we heard the cameras are so bad, the quality control is so bad." But I am this one. I'm not a scientific research, okay? But I am this one guy who's really excited about this camera.
You know, I think actually it's an awesome, groundbreaking camera. I think actually, and I was actually talking with this guy named Alex Lindsay. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Alex Lindsay. He's really kind of famous in the U.S. He has this really great company called Pixel Core, which is, they do all these live broadcasting, and he's also a Mac. I don't know if you ever listen to podcasts. He's a Mac guy. So yeah, he's standardized on Blackmagic because they have all this control software where you can actually do all this controlling over Ethernet, over the internet. So he's really hot on Blackmagic right now. And so that's really cool technology. And the thing is, they're really open about all their standards, so other people can interface with them. They're not all closed like Canon and Sony and the others. So to buy into their stuff, it's not as expensive and it's not as limiting. So I like that part of it.
All right. So I don't know much about anything else than being talking about cameras, really. And I don't know where you want to go with it, but I thought you also bought a new camera beside now the Blackmagic 4K you owned.
Yeah, I actually bought the C200.
So what's your take on that then?
Well, here's the take on the C200. It is hobbled in a way by the MP4 codec, but on purpose by Canon, which is very frustrating in a way because you know that camera can do whatever it wants to do.
But you do have, and I have to say this for you, I'm not a Canon user, I'm saying this for you, you do have the great autofocus.
Yes, we do have the great autofocus, and we have a really awesome raw internal recording.
And I have this as a Blackmagic user. But
my raw is better than your raw.
Yeah, but my raw is bigger than your raw.
But that's the problem. Your raw is too big.
Okay, but I can actually also record in a compression 4:1.
That's true. You can, but your 4:1 compression is the same as my raw light.
So my mother is way stronger than your. No, but you know one thing, because I would buy a Canon for the autofocus. I would buy a Canon for the colors. And I would buy definitely a Canon for the NDs. Okay, we have that now in the Pro version, of course. But the one thing which is for me unbeatable is that there is this ProRes option, because on a daily basis, I don't use RAW at all. And then if I'm sitting behind my computer and the beautiful ProRes flavor of my choice rolls into my editing suite, it's just so good.
That is Martin Longolo with Aputure and our very own Keith Moreau here on TechMove. Keith, I like the light. You know, before the iPad kind of screwed up and destroyed the video file, I got a chance to look at it, and you know, it looked like a stage light. You know, it looked like a stage spotlight in a way, but it looked very light.
Yeah, the actual physical, like if you actually, for example, I shot this thing in Dublin a little while ago.
Yes,
and I specified I was a cinematographer, and then I talked to some other cinematographers and people over there to tell them what equipment I wanted. You know, I wanted a 2K because we're doing the same thing. We're trying to. This was before the Aputure. I had the Aputure, so I didn't bring it, and I can't bring that much stuff anyway. So I just specified the equipment I wanted. So they bring a 2K and set it up in this room, and it's gigantic. It's like 1.5 feet in diameter, and it's not that heavy because they're aluminum. There's a lot of space inside.
Sure,
but it's big. It's big, and it requires a big stand to hold it up, and then you put the softbox in front, and that makes it really front heavy. And it's just a gigantic beast, and no better. And it's hot. It's 2K of light, so it's really super hot. Like you can't even touch it for like 20 minutes, or else you burn yourself.
Right.
Those heat sink fin.
They don't do anything. They all those are not really heat sinks. They're actually grills for cooking meat.
They are. I think George Foreman actually modeled his, his grill after that.
He gets a cut. He gets a cut.
But anyway, so compare that, which is the same amount of light, just gigantic and really inconvenient, versus this thing, and you can still get it just as soft. It just spreads out, and you put a softbox in front or other diffusion, and so, but it's just the convenience of just having this one powerful thing to set up versus several lights that are aiming in the same direction and diffuse. So it's all about setup time in this case for me. It's all about just getting it done quickly so I can do other stuff related to the shoot.
So when I look at it again, coming from stage and screen as I do, I kind of look at it again as one of those lighting cans on a stage truss. You know what I mean?
We're just miniature. Yeah, it is. It's kind of like that with a little fitting on the front.
How in the world can you use it? Because it looks like it could be almost spotlightish, but I'm going to imagine that the light source actually kind of spreads kind of wide. At least you should be able to.
Yeah, it's naturally not that tight. It's naturally not like, it's kind of like an incandescent. If you don't have an incandescent with a lens in front of it, it kind of spreads out pretty quick. It's not like a spotlight. It needs a lens to make it a spotlight. So it's kind of like that. I don't know the exact degrees, but it's pretty wide. It's like maybe like a 40-degree spread.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's pretty wide. So you have that, and you have that back far enough from like a softbox. So the softbox I got was the I'm just gonna look it up. Westcott Bowens mount. So there's kind of a it's the Westcott Rapid type boxes, and they have and they're really cool because they have this Bowens kind of bayonet mount on the back, so that's how you mount them. And then when you want to expand them and get them to be spread out, so it's kind of like an umbrella. You just pull in the middle of this kind of centerpiece, and the whole thing spreads out like an umbrella.
Oh, okay.
And then you can do that after or before you put it onto the light. And the Bowens mount's just like a bayonet, just kind of. It's almost like a lens mount. You just push it in to the front of the Aputure and then twist it, and it locks. And it's just there. And then when you want to remove it, it's just like a lens. You push in a little button, and then you twist it and take it off. So it's pretty darn quick and easy to set up. And so the actual physical box is not that big for the 2K. It's maybe bigger than if I put all the stuff needed for 2K's worth of flex lights. But it's just the quickness of setup. So I may sacrifice maybe a little bit of space for just super quickness.
Mm-hmm.
And it also runs off batteries too.
And it certainly looks like a different thing than your Westcott flex lights, right? Where this is definitely a piece of hardware here.
Yeah, it's definitely got some dimension to it. It's physically big like a regular light, but not as big as the equivalent in an incandescent for sure, and not even HMI lights, which are another type of super bright, pretty efficient lights, still hot and still have issues like incandescents. But it's kind of like an HMI, but maybe a bit smaller and a lot cooler and uses less power. So HMI has been the traditional thing for kind of run and gun doc filmmakers and kind of like me. But I held off on getting the HMI because I just didn't want to get something that was used too much power, and held out for this, and this was the ultimate thing. So I ordered it and waited for like 3 months to get it. So they were just shipping them when I did that interview with Martin.
Do you like it? Do you like it?
I haven't had a chance to really use it. I just haven't been in a situation where I needed that super amount of light. but I have tested it, and I love the quickness of the setup.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and
That's
I love
good.
the way and just the Bowens mount on is really flexible. So they actually, Aputure I think sells a Fresnel light, which is a focusable front part you could put on the light, where you can actually change the angle of the beam from kind of wide to pretty narrow, and that makes it more like a spotlight. So that makes it really versatile too. Like if you need to be kind of far away from your subject, but you still need to get light on them, and it could be at night. Maybe you're like, I don't know, like on a boat dock or something. You need to show the whole dock. You can't have the light in there. You could use this to focus it and throw the super extremely bright light and illuminate everything as if it was moonlight or whatever, and still be far enough away and also focus it. And you can run off batteries too, which is really cool. You just have to run off these pretty gigantic V-mount batteries, but still you can still make it totally portable. So I see this being as very versatile and usable for many years.
Excellent.
Yeah.
The give us that model number again, would you please?
It's the Aputure 300D.
Aputure
300.
D300.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. You know a manufacturer's list price on that? What they're kind of going for?
I think it's like $1,200.
$1,200?
Yeah, 11 or 12, something like that.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to the Aputure folks, specifically Martin Longolo.
Yeah, he was actually a really funny guy. There's like a little thing in there because he's a Blackmagic Design Ursa Mini Pro.
Right. That's what he
owner.
was. Yeah, that's what he was
and
talking about. Yeah.
And I was the C200, proponent, and we were just having this kind of like, mine's better than yours. It was pretty funny. He's a funny guy.
That's great. Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to Martin. Thanks to Keith Moreau.
Yep.
We will take a little break, and we will come back with another interview at the IBC.
Which stands for
International. Go ahead. Go ahead.
International Building Code.
Ah, very good. Very good. The International Building Code.
Yeah, it's very important to make sure these acronyms are correct.
Very good. So IBC, we're going to come back with another amazing interview. So we'll come back with more of this right here on TechMove. Rod Louie and Keith Moreau here with you on TechMove on our continuing coverage of the IBC 2017, which stands for the International Broadcasting Convention, or the International House of Pancakes, whichever one you prefer.
I thought it was the International...
or the irritable bowel.
I couldn't even.
Like you said.
I couldn't even remember my joke. Irritable bowel convention. It was like 3 minutes ago we thought of this. And I can't remember it.
We've already forgotten. Well, you know what? And you're not to blame because the interviews have been dazzling. So I don't blame you at all. And in fact, we're going to dazzle the TechMove universe again with another great interview. I found this particularly enjoyable. Not that the other one wasn't, but this was kind of learning about a certain individual. Mm-hmm. And Keith Moreau was lucky enough to get the great Alex Lindsay. Yeah. And for those who may not know, Keith, I'm going to let you kind of do a little bit of the introductions of Alex Lindsay.
Sure. So Alex, I've known about Alex forever, partly because I think he was the originator of the MacBreak and MacBreak Weekly podcasts. He was definitely one of the founders of that stuff. And I think now he's more of a guest host, but he's still on pretty often. And his career's kind of morphed from being more of a computer animation expert to actually running a company that does videography and broadcasting for events and things like that. So, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that's kind of what I know about him. But I've just kind of followed him, and I've heard him on podcasts, hundreds of times. And he's really he's a real technical expert. He knows a lot about cinematography and cameras and stuff that I'm interested, that we're both interested in. And so, and he's a professional, like when he buys stuff, it's not like, it's not like a consumer stuff. It's usually pretty high end, Like I think he bought one of the first secondhand F900s for, back then this was like the first Sony digital 24p camera that was used for the original or the middle Star Wars epics.
Sure.
The first use of digital cameras for cinematography in real movies.
Okay.
To that time, it was just film before that. Yeah, the middle version, the middle series of the Star Wars was the first real movies to use this digital stuff and really seriously.
Right.
And it was pretty crude and rough back then. If you look at it now, you can tell there's a lot of artifacts and things like that. But back then, it was state of the art. So he was one of the first people to kind of be involved in that. And I think he bought one of those cameras from that show and used it for his business and other things. Anyway, so he's a legend. I knew about him, and just by chance, we were staying in the same hotel. We're eating the same kind of bed and breakfast room that they have there at the hotel. It's like a very nice little dining room they have, and just heard this voice, and I know it's him. I'm facing away from him, but I hear his voice. I was doing something like trying to find out where to go and when it was going to start the IBC convention, and I hear this voice, and he's like giving me directions, like it starts this time, or you can get there this way. And I turn around and it's him, and then I don't say anything. I don't say Alex Lindsay and just like bow at his feet, gesticulating. I don't do it right. I don't do it at that point. I do it later, but I don't do it then. And then I just think, I think I'm going to introduce myself somehow. So I turn around and I say, hi, you're Alex Lindsay, aren't you? He says, yeah. And I said, yeah, I follow you for years, fan, and etc. So, and then later I said, I'm doing this podcast, TechMove. Maybe you'd like to be interviewed. So, oh, sure, I'd love to. So anyway, that was what happened.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Keith, admittedly, that's what happens to us too. I'm at the local police department being booked in, and some of my colleagues that are there will say, "Hey, I recognize your voice, you SOB." Get in this cell, and I'm gonna really teach you a lesson, there, fella.
I'm sorry about the TechMove's reputation. It precedes us.
That's right. So, anyway,
being arrested for being on TechMove.
So, no, that's right. I remember listening to MacBreak like quite a while ago, and I still listen to I think what would you call him? His partner Leo Laporte quite often on all of his other Twit network stuff that he has going on, and I've always enjoyed that those podcasts, and those are always great. So fantastic. Awesome. Okay, well, let's get to it. This is this one has a substantial amount of meat to it, so let's get to it right now. Here is Alex Lindsay along with our very own Keith Moreau live on the IBC 2017 floor, and I don't think we had any really technical problems with this one. I think that this one was pretty good, right?
It was pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get back to it, and we'll come right back right after the interview with Alex Lindsay right here on TechMove.
Okay, we're recording? Sounds good? Okay. So, well, hello, this is Keith Moreau here with TechMove, and I actually have one of my idols here that I, by chance, met at the same hotel that we're staying at.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, Alex. It's really, really wonderful to meet you. You're so gracious to actually spend some time with us here at the IBC 2017 show. And I know that, so the thing about TechMove is it's like you as a guest were just built for TechMove, because TechMove is about technology, Macs, iOS devices, and cinematography.
That sounds great. Sounds like a great subject.
So you're like the perfect guest. So I know a little bit about your background and kind of your history from the beginning. Even before you were into cinematography, I guess. But maybe you could tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, I mean, I started shooting. I kind of started photography and programming all at the same time. So for me, it was all very meshed together. I started programming on a TRS-80 or a Trash 80, a little Radio Shack, and then an Apple IIe when I was 10, and then also got a K1000 Pentax, that you could take pictures with, and is all manual, and so I kind of learned both of those pieces very slowly for a very long time. I didn't really get into professional media until I was 19. I started working at a radio station, and
you do have a radio voice.
Well, thanks. It's actually, I went in and I just interned and said, I'm willing to sweep the floors for free. Like that was it. And there was, at some point they said, why don't we have you try to do a commercial? And then next thing I knew, I was on air and got to do that for a little while and work in the music industry, which was the best training. Working at Sony Music as part of their college marketing was this incredible training in how to make deals, how to work with people, how to find a win-win situation because you didn't have any money to work with, and all of those things that I use every day now was definitely part of that. And then from there, I moved into TV, worked at Prime Sports Network, which is now part of Fox Sports, and didn't do any part of the video. I was just the print designer that designed their print ads, but I learned how to use this crazy program called Photoshop, which had come out, and Quark Express. And then moved because I really couldn't get a job at Prime Sports Network doing video. They thought that I was too young or something. Wasn't really given that opportunity. So I went and interned again at a company that sold Electric Image and Form Z, which were the 3D programs that I wanted to use, and ended up going into a game company and then into legal animation of all things, and then ended up in a roundabout way, ended up at Lucasfilm and then Industrial Light and Magic, and so worked on Star Wars Episode 1 for a little bit, and 3 years, and then left to start my own thing. And that's kind of how the Pixel Corps, began, thinking that I could train everybody to do visual effects. And what I really got good at was video. So because we had to do all this training, we had to figure out, it was great to know how to do visual effects, but I had to figure out how to get the video and the audio out to everybody. And so we got good at that. And then before we knew it, we were doing lots of live streams. And so now most of our business is live streaming for a lot of big corporate clients and government agencies and VIPs. So that's kind of what we do now. And we're getting ready, literally next week, or over the weekend, of opening our membership back up, starting to open our training back up, kind of coming back to our roots in a lot of ways. A lot of the place that I would personally prefer to be a lot of the time is working on still empowering other people to do it rather than us just doing it. So.
Tell me a little bit about Pixel Corps, like how many people are involved, and what you actually do when you set up a typical job or something like that.
So we've got about the Pixel Corps itself has about 28 people working for it, so that are full-time staff, and so there's obviously some guys that take care of our warehouse. We've got a bunch of tech guys that kind of build the kits and prepare everything to go out. And also work in the field. We've got people that just manage travel. We do a lot of travel, so we have a great person that does that. We have and then we have a DC facility as well as a facility in Northern California up in San Rafael, and so that's what we do mostly is on-site live streaming or something that requires video over the web. So it's not or video over some kind of IP network. It doesn't always mean that we're live streaming it. Sometimes it's a point-to-point. So you have a VIP that wants to show up at somewhere in the world, and they can't be there. And our job is to make sure that kind works seamlessly. Or that VIP wants to speak to the rest of the world, or that corporation wants to speak to the rest of the world. So those are the kind of things that we do that let us kind of we make that hopefully easy and relatively stable. There's a lot of variables, so a lot of what we have to do is really manage the logistics. Anybody can stream, relatively easily. I mean, Facebook lets you do it on your phone, so does YouTube, but being able to do it day in, day out with a high level of reliability requires a lot of logistics. Making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be long before you need it, making sure you have a backup to the backup, making sure that you know how that's going to work, having central ways to support crews on the, so for instance, all of our stuff is set through IP, so I can, if I don't like the way someone's mixing something or the color of their cameras, we can change it from anywhere in the world, and so.
Describe. You actually told me this morning about some really interesting way of controlling things remotely. If you're not pleased with it.
Yeah. So so almost every piece of equipment that we add to our systems now requires that it has some sort of control via IP. So whether we're using an audio mixer, the audio mixers that we primarily use are Behringer and Yamaha mixers. And then the camera systems that we are more and more using are Blackmagic cameras. In fact, we're slowly standardizing on that process. And one of the big reasons for our standardization is specifically because I can shade a Blackmagic camera through its switcher from 3,000 miles away or 8,000 miles away. I can, and it's not rocket science to set that up. It's something that it's just using telnet commands that are able, I can literally just log into that. And that has made it super seamless, for us to make those fine adjustments quickly. And you don't have to have the expert for every single piece of equipment on site. That expert can come in and troubleshoot problems for you regardless of where they are in the world. And that allows us to create a level of reliability and a level of consistency that's very hard when you have lots of crews going in lots of different places. So it's kind of a requirement on our end to be able to control all of our equipment via IP. And then we have not a super complex, but a relatively robust infrastructure in the back end, a VPN system that lets us basically all of our stuff logs in. There's all the stuff that's all kind of part of the Borg, that allows us to have, a lot of what we do is dealing with multiple locations at one time. And when I say multiple locations, it's not multiple rooms, it's really multiple cities or multiple continents, sometimes near space. And so we have to be able to how are we going to be able to communicate with all of those things reliably and and efficiently, and that's not just your program audio, but also all your comms, your video. Everything has to be all tied into a larger system.
I think that actually Alex Lindsay is Batman. I can imagine him in the Bat Cave typing these telnet commands. And by the way, by saying telnet, you just went into the geeky zone of TechMove. Typing in telnet, like ls / or no / because backslashes aren't used.
The nice thing is that we don't have to type anything in. What's great about that is that the interfaces, and you can build interfaces because for us, because when we talk about video, because Blackmagic, for instance, has created such an open architecture for us to be able to talk to all their equipment. That makes it easier for us to integrate it into the entire pipeline. It's not that we can't do it with other cameras and hardware, but it's much more difficult. And when we at the level, we have to have so many. We have a small broadcast trailer, then we also have 6 fly kits, and then we have to sometimes support 8 or 10 locations. That all that stuff requires a different thinking that most people have to deal with when they're doing a live production.
So are you the big boss?
I don't know. I think I have a couple bosses, and I feel like I'm I guess I'm the CEO, but a lot of times I feel like I'm working for my employees. My job is to keep them supported and make sure that they're being taken care of, and doing what I can to keep everybody employed. So I don't know if I'm the big boss as much as just the guy that everyone calls when there's something broken.
So you're not the typical CEO that if somebody messes up a little bit, you're fired. Next.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's it's not that we don't. I am known for being a little fiery at times, but firing I don't think is really a thing that we it's something we kind of avoid at all costs. We really look at every adjustment, every piece is learning. I saw this great. I'm embarrassed to say, this morning I was looking at Twitter. I was about to tweet something out, and I went by and I follow Katy Perry. And Katy Perry had this great little quote that just said, remember, it's not a failure. You're not failing. You're learning. And just a great quote. I don't know where she got that or whether she just made it up on the thing, but a lot of times when you're correcting people who are working for you or working with you, you're investing more and more into their ability to do what they do. And we have what I think is just a stellar staff. I mean, every person in the company, to me, is all muscle. There's nobody that I go, they're not really, they're good enough. I used to, and it took us a little while to get to that place, but we have just such an incredible staff that, all at every level is doing such a great job. And so I don't, I never have believe that someone is doing something for the wrong reason. It's just a, misguided, whatever, and sometimes I'm misguided. So I think we're all just trying to figure out the best way to do it. And most of what we do, like we talk to a lot of clients and they'll go, well, have you ever done this before? And I'm like, no. We haven't done this before. We've done a lot of different pieces that are like it, but we've never done this before. And they're like, well, how do you know you can do it? And I said, well, because we don't fail. We don't fail very often. It's, but you have to get comfortable for what we do anyway, living inside of it's very unpredictable, and it's very, very challenging, and it still has to come out the other end as a success. And that's and that we know that every person in our crew is clear of that and works very hard to achieve that.
That's pretty cool. So I have a teeny little awareness of what you do, because I've done teeny little mini versions of what you do. So I have a lot of clients in the high tech field, smaller businesses, some larger, and they want to do like a live stream Facebook or a live stream YouTube or something like that. And so a while back, I invested in some Wirecast software and a couple Blackmagic design boxes and a little micro SD inputs for HDMI or SDI into your Thunderbolt. And I've done several of these little things, teeny little compared to you. Basically I'm doing it. But so I have a little, but it's really pressurized because you're going live. You have to make sure everything works. I remember before one of my gigs recently was a Facebook Live thing. It was actually my first one. And of course I wasn't as honest as you. I told the client I had done it before. I had done YouTube a lot before, right, but I hadn't done Facebook. And you know how Facebook is screwy. So I set the whole thing up, the whole essentially studio up the day before in my house to make sure that every little thing would work and that I had all the little pieces that I would need. So I assume you probably do testing like that.
Our guys build every kit and test it before it goes out. So our stuff goes out, usually ours are going out in pretty large cases. It's rare for us to show up with less than 10 cases. We keep on, I always go, how do we have so many cases for this simple little connection? And then they show me and I'm like, okay, we needed all that stuff. And so, but and a lot of our stuff now, when it's going internationally, we use a shipping company. They come pick it up on pallets and it disappears. But all of that before it leaves, gets built, tested. We do everything we think we're going to do in the event, knowing that, and then we add 25% more capacity, knowing that the client's going to ask for these 3 things, and they're going to ask for something else, and they're going to want it yesterday, and so we kind of try to guess what that's going to be and add a little bit to it. And then we pack it all up carefully and put it on a crate, and then Rocket comes and picks it up. So that's the company that we use. But I think it's important. And one of the reasons that we own all of our equipment, or own almost all of our equipment, is specifically for that reason. If you rent equipment, it's really, really hard for you to know if it's going to work well. I mean, you don't know who's done what with it, whether it got wet, whether it was in a humid area, whether it got spilled on, where the settings are. Some settings you can reset, and other ones are in the firmware. And there's all these things you don't know when you rent a piece of equipment. And so by owning it, it allows us to know where it's been. We have policies about how we handle it, and then we also, when we build it, we're able to build it weeks ahead of time, test it, make sure it's exactly what we want, and then send it out. And that's kind of a unique situation for us.
That's pretty cool. So I know that you've never screwed up, because you told me that you've never failed.
I have not never failed. I have. I think I corrected that as I was saying. It's like rarely fail. Now we've definitely had. I think what's interesting is I think actually the handful of failures that we've had are, have affected the DNA way more than the successes. Everything about what we do is to avoid the pain of what happened. And so it's about, in a couple hundred events a year, we'll have one ghost, we'll have one broken arrow, and it's usually just, because most of what we do is really high profile. It's a big deal, and then there's lots of meetings, and there's lots of process, and there's lots of, and our clients sometimes don't understand why we're so overbearing, like we're like, we have to have this, and this is the way it has to look, and this is the way we need, and this is the way we work, and it can be overwhelming for some clients and partners, but it's all us avoiding, we know what to avoid and where all the sharp edges are, and we want to stay away from all of them. Like, we just keep pushing, like, let's move the knives into the other room, and so that's that's what we're constantly working on to try to stay ahead of it.
So can you relate in a basic way some near disaster story, but you pulled it out in the end, like Batman or something like that would do?
We had an event. Let me see if I can think of a good one. And we've had a lot of events. We've had events where we're an hour before the event or 2 hours before the event, and we have a tendency to everyone stays pretty calm on comms. There's not and if you're listening to it, you wouldn't know that anything's wrong. But we had a UPS, one of our generators. We're in the middle of nowhere, and one of our generators went down. Generators are usually the thing that really is the core of many of our stress points. But we had a generator go down, and it sent the wrong voltage to our UPS, uninterruptible supply system and power supply, and the UPS, caught fire, and so it was so suddenly the whole place is filling up with smoke, and we're 2 hours before a big, very, very, very expensive live stream that was very complicated, and all you hear over the comms is, Marty, we need you in the truck. We've got smoke. And so we fixed it all and got it all running. But a lot of those events, we try to have the clients we try to not have them in there to see how the sausage is getting made, because, generally the only reason we'll start late is because of talent. Talent running late, talent not being ready, that tends to be the thing. So our job is always that we can be on time. And we try to not have the client see how close we came to not being on time or not having an event, or, because again, 99.8% of the time we have an event. It's on time, and then there's a handful of ones where we lose contact with
something in near space.
Yeah. So yeah, and other things that we sort out. Those are. Again, a lot of our stuff is complicated. They might be deep underwater, or they might be not on Earth, and they might be trying to connect from really complicated locations, or Antarctica, or all these things, and we have to. There's just so many variables that go into it, and so we try to stay as far ahead of it as we can, and make it work.
It sounds. I'm actually just sweating thinking about his job, and all these people that do his job.
We burn through a lot of people, I will admit. We have to, we don't, our interviews are more like, do you really understand what's going to happen here? There's going to be times when it's not uncommon to run an 18-hour day here. It's not the way it's always going to be, but it's going to be hard work. The folks, when we bring them in, and I think that's why we have such a great crew, to every single person, is that they either knew what was happening before, or they're ready for it, but they just know that it's production, it's live production, and we can't fail, and so they knew that coming in, and they're ready for it. I think anybody that's not ready for that level of stress doesn't last very long. It is definitely not something for everyone. We'll work with people and go, yeah, they're not a live person. They're really good at what they do, not good for live. And because it just and generally those people are really good at the details. They're good at the tech. They're good at there's something they're really good at, but live is this kind of brute force. It's it is the battlefield of video production. Where there's you're in it. And I don't want to equate it to the incredible work that's done by actual military. But it's very high stress. And you end up in those things. It's still 1/10 of the stress of a real battlefield, but still it's 10 times more than your average video production.
Yeah. Okay, I'm still sweating. Okay, so that's an amazing explanation. Now, getting back to some of the camera cinematography. So you use Blackmagic cameras, and those are, I guess they're known as broadcast, but they're also known as cinematography, kind of cinema cameras. So tell me how you use those. Yeah,
so we have a lot of different cameras. So we've got some Sony cameras, P1s that we use for some of our remote control stuff, as well as F23s. Some red cameras, some red Scarlets that we use for an underwater rig that we have. We have and then we've got a ton of Sony FS100s that we use for a long time as souped up web cameras. And then we've got a bunch of Canon XF105s, and we've got a huge number of G10s that we use kind of like witness cameras in the background. And then we have, but then we've slowly started to buy more and more of the Blackmagic. So we have, 8 or 10 mini Ursas, and 10 or 15 of the micro studios, four or five of the regular studios, and some of the older ones. The first Blackmagic cameras were not great, to be honest. I mean, I didn't think that was ever going to work. And then the Ursa came out, and it was just too big. Like, it was just like, so it took us, it's not like we just jumped on the Blackmagic bandwagon. We're always like, a little clunky, and then they slowly got it working. I think the Mini Ursa for us was the sweet spot, and especially the new Pro that allows us to use a Canon mount or a PL mount. We, of course, after we bought a whole bunch of PLs, is when they put out the one that you can go back and forth. They're like, really, but being able to swap what kind of mounts we use with it. The big thing for us is because we're live. A lot of what we care about is the ability to control the camera remotely. And that might be in the room, might be from somewhere else in the world, but we want to, you get really used to that, and it's really hard to give up. That you suddenly have, I've got control of the color of the camera, I've got control of, a lot of the major settings that I need, all from somewhere else, and I can log into that camera and just do what I need to do to it to make it ready to do what I want, ready for the show. It has saved us so many times now that you get used to it. And when you're doing live, you expect that, right? The hard part is that the other camera systems are very closed, so it's a closed camera system. It's hard to get to the tools. You have to have their shading packet, shading hardware. The cables oftentimes are limited in length. There's all kinds of things that can be a real limiting factor using the other cameras. And so that's why we've kind of slowly moved to being able to use a Blackmagic camera. It's not that I think it's the best camera all the way around, but as a tool for what we do, I have a hard time. What we do is online distribution. We don't do. I will admit we view TV and even theaters as kind of what internally is referred to as legacy formats. So to us, the movie theater and the TV, the way we think of it now, is kind of like it'll be here for a while, and it's not that nothing will happen on TV. It's just that that's not where we think most of business will go. We're really looking more at, and we've been looking at this for 15 years, is we know that where most of the content's going to end up is on an Apple TV or Netflix or Amazon or YouTube or Facebook. Those are that's the future of the platform. So when we watch our footage on that platform, even at 4K on YouTube and now on Apple TV coming up and on Amazon, we don't see a significant difference between using an Arri and using a Blackmagic, Mini Ursa. The prices, there's a big difference in the price, and there's a big difference in the control. My brother would my brother is a DP and a Steadicam operator, and he would call what I just said blasphemous. So, I think he'd just be like, but and if he ever hears this, he'll probably call me, like, you're full of it. But, for us, it's more important to have a pipeline that is really working well than to have every little thing that an Arri, for instance, has. And I probably just gave up any kind of sponsorship I'll ever get from Arri. We're not doing their live streams. And so anyway, but when you look at these expensive packages, we've kind of gotten into this habit, kind of a belief system that we're not going to spend more than $10,000 on a camera. We spend a lot more than that on our lenses. So our lenses are very expensive lenses. The broadcast lenses that we use have to be controlled remotely and everything else. And we can literally change the focus and zoom on the camera from 3,000 miles away, with the way the thing's set up. And so so the lenses we'll spend money on, but the cameras not so much, because we know that we're going to use them for a year or two and then we're going to get another one, and I think that is something that, and again, I want to say, we're not sponsored. We don't get anything from Blackmagic. like there's nothing. They don't give us anything. But we've definitely kind of drank the lemonade, or the punch, the Kool-Aid, where we really that it's the entire ecosystem that works for us. And it's not that we don't have complaints about one thing or another, or wish there was something better, or sometimes we joke that it's almost cool, like it's like, oh, they're missing this one little thing, but it's but at the same time, that ecosystem, once you get into it, becomes harder and harder and harder to unlatch from, and I think that's one of the that's what we've kind of gotten into. We still use a ton of stuff from AJA. We use a ton of stuff from Sony. We use a ton of stuff, that our audio pipeline is still all, different things. Mostly, again, as I said earlier, Behringer and Yamaha. And for us, in the same way that's important, for us, when we look at like our audio equipment, we want that to all tie into Dante. And that's actually one of our little complaints. Like the Dante, like Blackmagic.
Tell us about Dante.
So Dante is it's a sound infrastructure. So it lets you route sound between equipment. And that equipment can be your Mac. It can be a Yamaha mixer. It can be a Behringer mixer. It can be outputs. It can be microphones. Everything. And what happens is it's a very high quality, low latency connection over Dante that allows you to have this super tight connection where you open up a thing and just say, I just want this output to go to this input, and you're able to route huge numbers of channels between things, and it becomes a lot simpler than having a whole lot of analog connections or even something like AES 50 or 67 or whatever. It's just kind of this open structure that lets us tie all these pieces of equipment together, and so
it's kind of like a real version of the Apple Audio MIDI interface.
Well, the MIDI interface still it's an audio version of that. MIDI of course lets you do all, tie in all this stuff and control all those things, but you need to be able to pass that actual audio somewhere. And it's still tweaky, like Dante is we in the early days we spent a lot of time being, painfully reminded that Dante has great power and requires great responsibility, so it has to have its own network, and it has to, and you can't have anything else doing with it. And you have to make sure that everything's got the same, is on the same time code, and you got to make sure that everything is, synced properly and everything else to make that work. So once we got through those things, that becomes a very addictive thing that you can just simply route quickly and tie everything together. And no matter how many places you're routing, you're not adding sound. Like you kind of, at first there's a safety to using analog because it's just you plug it in and it just works and it just does its thing. Over time, you get into a situation where the problem with analog is you're picking up audio, you're picking up all kinds of noise. Everything that you plug it into has some kind of coefficient that's being added to your mix, right? You can easily peak it, so now it's static. You can, but the main thing is it's just really hard to transport and reroute and so on and so forth without a lot of hardware. So you get kind of in this mode where what you really want is just Dante. You want a Dante connection to everything, and so you want everything to go out of analog and into Dante as fast as you can, and then Dante manages the connections between everything. And I got to say, I've been doing this for a long time. I only became a believer of this in maybe the last 2 years because we had so many problems with Dante, not building the network correctly and everything else. But once you get used to that, then it's like, oh, this is great. And you're suddenly able to tie all that together, and you're able to do all that routing, and it really makes it a much cleaner production. And then and it's not just the Dante that we have for a show. We have all our show audio, but we're also tying Dante. We have Dante cards for our ClearComm, and so we're tying all our comms together, and all of that stuff is controllable, within a network. It's very powerful.
That sounds pretty cool. I'll have to look into that when I do these massive, $1 million productions. So, getting back to the Blackmagic camera, I actually have one. I have the original Mini Ursa, the 3K.
The first Mini Ursa, yeah. That's great. That's the 4K.
The 4K. I said 3K. I meant 4K.
No, yeah. We tested the 4K, and fortunately, we knew that the 4.6 was coming, and so we bought. But the 4K is great too. We have one of those, and then we have the rest of them. We were lucky enough to have the 4.6s come out, and bought a ton of them. They're great.
I actually got the 4K because it had the global shutter. That was really the only reason.
Yeah. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, just because I have a really specific use for it for stabilization and doesn't have the rolling shutter effects. So I'm just going to use it for moving vehicles and things like that because you can really, I don't know if you've done that, but you can, when you use stabilization software and a camera that has global shutter, like the old CCD cameras, it's just solid.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things that has me always like, when I look at, we're so much of our pipeline now is 4K, so I have to give them up, but I have these F23s and these P1s, and I actually have an F950.
I heard about that.
Yeah, the infamous F950, one of the Star Wars cameras. And the F950 now sits in a nice it's in our insert studio in Washington D.C. and so it's still working, but it's not working very hard. It's kind of in retirement, but we have to take it. It's going to have to get switched up to 4K soon, and so I have to give these up. But there's something I still miss about all the CCDs. That there's a chip for every color, that they are on or they're off. There's all these things that we got used to that I still feel like we don't get the same quality out of the chips that we get now. I mean, we get more resolution, but I really, it's not the be all end all.
Yeah, actually, I was going to get the 4.6. Like, it was a no-brainer. And then they took out the feature of the global shutter.
Yeah, and we don't do that. Yeah, so it's not we don't use it that way. So, but it doesn't matter to us. But yeah, we don't do a lot of stuff that would require that.
Yeah. And actually,
the only thing I attach to, it's funny, I have a bunch of car attachments, but what I attach to cars tends to be I have a little Osmo with I have like every Osmo thing made, and we use it for all kinds of little things. I carry one, I think I want in my backpack. The one I mostly use is the one on my phone, so I just pop my phone in and I wander around and we use that a lot for like inserts and pickup shots, and not so much for the real core content, but if I needed like something, a lot of times I need some footage to paste two pieces of a live show together, like we need a break. So for me, the big thing is using either time lapse or Osmo footage or something to open a show or to put a break in or whatever. And so I found that the Osmo attached to the roof is kind of magical. Like if you get it just right. The problem with the phone one is that it acts like a little sail. So once you get about 40 miles an hour, it starts to bounce around a little bit. It can't stay stabilized. Whereas the round one can go a lot faster without, so if you actually use the head. Because I have one of the Osmos with the Zenmuse 5, the camera on it. So that makes that looks a little better. But the other thing we put on it is we attach spherical cameras, which are kind of fun. So I attached a Theta to my...
what is that, spherical camera?
So spherical camera is a 360 video camera. So at the time I got in attaching the Theta before any of the other cameras came out to my car and driving around, which was great because when you put the goggles on it, it feels like you're. And I use goggles kind of as a generic term because we use HTC and Oculus and Gear 360s and Daydream and all of the things are all part of what we play with. But you put those goggles on and you sit down and it's like you're sitting on someone's car. And what we did find though is that it's very important to turn the camera so that it's thin to the air, because I turned it the way you want to have it so you don't have any seams going down the middle of the car. At 55 miles an hour, the quarter 20 on the bottom fails, and that and it was really funny because it
just flew off.
It just went thunk. It hit my windshield and went up over, and I was like, well, at least the data will be okay. And then this paving truck was right behind me and just crushed it. Like it was just little bits and pieces. And I was like, and I even still took my little crushed one. I tried to plug it into the computer and try to maybe the memory is still connected to the output. No, it was gone. So.
Now I bet with enough resources you could have extracted that video.
I probably could. There's I guess what we call diminishing returns. I do so many tests. We break so many cameras that you hope you can get the data off of it, but yeah.
So when you are you into images and quality of video cameras or the sensors or things like that, or you're more into the live shoots and just getting the job done?
I definitely don't think I spend as much time as I used to really sizing up every camera. I think the problem is I've been doing this for too long, and every camera that comes out now is amazing. This is kind of like the people have no idea what we used to shoot with. My little Panasonic, what was it, the DVX 100 or whatever, and it is like. I remember we bought that as like our prized camera at the time. It's $4,000 and paid for this, and now I look at the old footage from I found it on an old drive and I was like, oh my gosh, that was horrible, and the EX1s and the EX3s and which were great at the time. There was a revolutionary at the time, for what we could do with them. But now every camera that comes out, the phone is better than that, and it's. And so, I'm just always like, the camera is amazing, and you can do anything. Like I did visual effects shots in 8-bit, for Star Wars. And, just be clear, like it's people get really tied up in the chips and the cameras and everything else. Now, I do know a fair bit about what chips are better than others, and what I think that and the resolutions. I love the idea of shooting in 8K and then going down to 4K, because now you're oversampling that image. So there's lots of things that I think are great. I think for me, I'm very, I guess I would say I'm just very practical, about what we do. I know that the kind of work that I do right now is not going to be put in the Smithsonian. It's not going to be a, changing the world in that way for the most part. And I know that it's really great, and it's in 4K. It's like, it's kind of like it's a, and so I think that what we do is definitely sufficient. I think that the cameras that we use right now produce the quality, and I'm very touchy about, we won't do production with chips that are at this point less than a half an inch, and really we want 4/3 is kind of the minimum chip size for us for most of the work that we do, for real professional work.
I actually have a question about that, because I know that a lot of the Blackmagic cameras are larger sensors, especially the Ursa Mini Pros. They're Super 35 size or maybe even larger. How do you deal with the depth of field issues in a live event?
Yeah, so I was about to mention that. So the one time that we sometimes go down to 2/3 inch chips is specifically really big live events where I have a really long throw. So because of course what happens is that as you especially if it's a darker event, as you open up your aperture, you're going to shorten that depth of field. As you zoom in further, you're going to shorten that depth of field, and so you end up on a Super 35 chip having a razor sharp. Little, like it's you've got an inch, and typically if someone's on stage, you got to have at least 2 or 3 feet of focus, and so what you try to do, the nice thing about a lot of these chips is that they gain up pretty well. So you can get away on a Blackmagic camera of gaining all the way to 18. Some people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. But because we're streaming it, the macro blocking tends to blend all that in anyway, and so we don't really see that much. I can see it in the raw footage, but we'll sometimes gain up so that we can close that aperture down to make it work. It still looks better, in my opinion, than a 2/3 inch chip, even though we're gaining up. And so 2/3 inch chips, you can't gain up really. I mean, past 3, maybe 6 is kind of the highest that you can go. So for long throws, that becomes more of a challenge with the Super 35. Again, the other things that you really want to get into is we use larger monitors for the camera ops. So when a camera op is going to be 200 or 300 feet away, they need at least a 10 inch, if not a larger monitor to look at to know whether they're in focus. The little one now is close is not is not good enough. It's still only good for hand grenades and nukes. So you have to get you really have to get that fine resolution, and we have to really look at it. And we have some of it all comes down also to the camera operators. You really, as you do long throws, we need better camera operators. Some camera operators just don't have the eyesight, they don't have the temperament, we definitely have trouble with, they just don't see it. They don't see the focus. And so we have to, and sometimes we're walking them in on the focus because we just can't. And obviously they get to work with us once.
So do they have a follow focus, or how do they focus?
Most of our live lenses have controls on the handles. So on the handles, we have the operators will have control of their zoom and focus without having to reach up to the lenses. And so it's not really a follow focus as you have in film. It's more of a and we have those too for some things, but it's really like these kind of hand controllers that you can use to control the camera or lenses.
Are the lenses electronically focusing?
Yeah, the lenses are controlled electronically. Yeah, so they
don't have like a little follow focus gear or anything.
They have it on the outside that you can grab onto, but we usually disengage that because we want them to use the handles, because they're moving around and they're following someone, and they really can't be reaching up and grabbing onto the lens. So for a live event for us, most of the time you're going to have hand controls to do that. So
in the case of one of these lenses that you're controlling, do you mount something extra on the lens, or does it just come with the lens?
The lenses that we buy, it comes with it, but we've also used a lot of, there's a lot of ones that you can attach to the film lenses, and even attach to regular lenses. So for instance, Red Rock Micro makes some great little motors that you can attach a piece to your Canon lens, let's say, and then you have rails and you attach the little motors, and then they can control it. They're not quite as you have to have your own people do it because they're not the interface isn't as standard as everybody else. So if you bring a broadcast guy in with our controllers for the big lenses, they kind of look the way everybody's looks, right? And so if you hire someone in Chicago, they're most likely going to understand how that works. So you have to think about systems and how they interact with lots and lots of freelancers. We probably hire 200 or 300 freelancers a year, in different locations because you can't fly your whole crew there. So it's harder for anything that's non-standard to be part of that. But we've got tons of the Red Rock Micro stuff for our own stuff, which works great. There's also Preston makes a lot of great stuff that is remote controlled and so on and so forth. So those are all things that we use in different situations. You still use stuff like that, especially when you're doing something like a Steadicam. You still need all those motors to control the Steadicam because you can't. He doesn't have any handles either. He's just got a big camera, and so those are the other things you have to think about.
Okay, cool. So that's really cool stuff. I'm not sure how much more time you have for. We've been doing this a while. I have.
I got a little time.
Okay. I have so many more questions. I could probably talk to you for like 3 days, but I think we might run out of memory on the iPad. But until we do, we're gonna keep talking. It's gonna be like a marathon. Alex, we're gonna be having food trucked in. No, I actually have a question because another specialty of Alex, I think, is still and definitely in the past was Mac technology, Apple Mac technology. So, are you still into the Mac?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we're still a big Mac shop. So, we have some Windows machines for some of our CAD and engineering stuff that we have to do. That stuff just, it isn't really that popular on the Mac. And then we have a lot of Linux systems for streaming. So most of our streaming boxes are all Linux, and our Stitchers for 360 are Linux. But the vast majority of our computers are still Mac.
So I'm an avid Mac fan. I've got the first Mac, or maybe the second Mac, the Mac Plus, and then have been a Mac fan ever since. And I have to use PCs occasionally to do things, but I guess I'm a Mac cult member, Apple cult member. And so I still actually am using the cheese grater Mac, the last really good Mac, large chassis Mac that they made, the Mac Pro that they designed back in 2010. And I've just souped it up to the max. I've got everything in there they could possibly put in there to speed it up, make it more powerful, and it's still working.
Yeah, I think I miss a large chassis. We have 3 of what we call the trash cans, that we use for some of our software only runs on it. So we use those, and they're I'm sure Apple hates the fact that everyone calls them trash cans, but they look like trash cans. So anyway, but the I think that they're great. They do what they do, but they're obviously behind. We're waiting for the new ones. What we'd love to see is them for Apple to realize that we don't really want it as a desktop I want to be able to rack mount it. I want to what my perfect Mac is a 3U, a 3.
The old Apple server things they used to have.
But it's like, even the Apple server was like, I think, a 1U,
Right.
What we really want is a 3U that I can drop cards into. But the idea is if Apple could redefine that process of, I'm just going to slide things in and out and make it super adjustable and do all those things without having to make sure that your cards are perfectly lined up or anything else, like that, all that gets easy, and they do the Apple design for it, would be a great way to, use the Pro. Because for us, what we want is all those computers somewhere else, and then you just have a fiber connection, and then you're just sitting there interacting with it. Your monitor is on your desk, and your keyboard's on your desk. I don't care about the rest of the computer. It should just be somewhere else.
So, I know that there's been some announcements of possibly a new Mac Pro, more modular Mac Pro. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's what we're hoping to see. We're just hoping to see it not be something round. We wanted something that we can again put into a wall somewhere. Like put into a rack mount somewhere.
I would actually just be happy with a new version of the old cheese grater.
I would too. I think that was one of my favorite form factors. I have a souped up iMac at home that I work on, and I like that. And I'm looking forward to the iMac Pro. I think that the iMac Pro is going to be pretty nifty. It'll do a lot of what people want it to do pretty effectively. But I do think there's still an argument for having something that's kind of hidden away and running a lot of different things at the same time.
Do you have any ideas or any information about this supposedly new modular Mac that's coming out?
I know nothing about it. I have no inside information other than what bounces around on the web.
What are you speculating it might be?
I don't think it'll be what I want. I think it'll be something else. It'll be some kind of
like what I
experience that is modular. I mean, I definitely think that modularity is going to be the Mac Pro. I think the next big Mac Pro is going to have a lot of ways to upgrade it easily, and I think Apple can probably do a better job at that. But I think that is the so that'll be the challenge there. But
do you think they're going to have a trash canny type thing, but with just Thunderbolt 3, and then sell a chassis that goes with it or something?
I think they're going to move away from the circular one. It was really good when you're not going to upgrade it a lot. It's not super modular. It's going to be really hard. Maybe they can pull it off. I mean, Apple can do almost anything, but I don't. It's difficult all the way around. The circular nature of it is from a production perspective kind of a pain. So I get the thought process that got us there, but I'd love for that thought process to change to something else that actually worked in production.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. So, what type of software do you use on your Macs?
We use a wide variety of software on the Mac. We're a Final Cut 10 house, so Final Cut 10 is definitely something we do a lot of editing on.
So I actually do have Final Cut 10, but I think I adopted it too early and I got burned by it, so I stopped using it really, really early, like when it first came out. It was just so different than Final Cut 7. And so I actually, when Final Cut 7 was kind of discontinued, I actually went over to Premiere Pro, which is pretty much Final Cut 7. And I've been on Premiere Pro since then. But I'm actually thinking about going back to Final Cut 10.
We have Premiere Pro on a lot of machines, and it's good. It's a really solid package. We have Avid a little bit as well. For us, Final Cut 10, and we had the advantage that Steve Martin and Mark Spencer are friends, and we have a show with them, and so we did a big training a couple months after Final Cut 10 came out internally, and they taught the class. So our guys went from 0 to 100 almost immediately, and so that was super great for us as far as that's how we got into Final Cut 10 so quickly. When it comes to just pure speed, I need to get something edited quickly. There's nothing like Final Cut 10. Speed at which when I talk to reporters and they're like, "Well, I wanted to go faster, so I use Premiere." I'm like, "Yeah, that's not the reason you use Premiere. Like you wanted it to be the same, so you use as you use Premiere. You want to integrate with After Effects, you use Premiere. You want to integrate with you want to have all the things that Adobe does. Premiere makes sense. You want to run on a PC, Premiere makes sense. You want to go faster, that's not the right answer. Final Cut is infinitely fast. I mean, we had some friends that had a big event, and they literally brought people in from Apple, from Adobe, from Avid, and they had them train them up, and they saw how fast can I take an event and get cut downs to onto the web, and they picked Final Cut 10 for that because it was the fastest way to do that.
Yeah, I wish that Adobe somehow could speed up their software to the point where because it's not just, I know that Final Cut 10 has a different paradigm of editing, which may be faster in itself, but it is just faster. It actually plays back video faster. The playhead moves faster. It deals with native files faster.
Well, the funny thing is that what Apple was trying to do is persuade everybody to, that's how the Final Cut got started, was Apple was trying to prove that you could build an editing platform on top of the hardware and on top of the software infrastructure. And they had to buy Final Cut to prove that. I mean, it was really a proof of concept. It was never, I don't think it was ever really designed to become what it became. And then, Walter Murch using it for Cold Mountain was really the big, it wasn't just that he used it. It was that you had engineering talking to him every day and giving him new builds and him, and so he transformed it into what it needed to be. So I think it was between Final Cut 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 or whatever was the Murch effect. And that's when it really became an editing package. But it became a real editing package that became that after Walter Murch. And then it really became this thing that was everybody was using by Final Cut 7. And then, Apple being Apple is, says we're just going to make it better, and we're going to make a huge shift. And I think what people forget is that the most used editing package in the world is actually iMovie. When we talk about all these, how big the market is and everything else, iMovie is the biggest one. It's the biggest game in town. So making it easy to go from iMovie to Final Cut is not a bad idea. You know, like an iMovie had already been redesigned, and so going into Final Cut that way, I think that there probably could have been another way to do it. You know, like, you know, I think that keeping Final Cut, you know, and I think what Apple didn't want to do necessarily is, and I don't have any inside information. This is all just me, but I understand the thought process of not wanting to expend your scarce resources on two platforms at the same time. But it felt like if you hadn't been shifted over to a new one overnight, you'd end up with people that would kind of learn to know it. You know, I think that, but I think Final Cut 10, after using Final Cut 10 for 6 months, you go back to anything that's the old paradigm, and you're like, bleh. I don't. You do have to get over that hump, though. You know.
Yeah, the thing is, I've started projects on it, and it's just so difficult to actually get anything done. You know, I say, okay, I'm going to convert over my whole editing to Final Cut, and then I try a little project, and it just takes me forever to do the simplest thing.
The bottom line is you really have to, I will say, if you're an editor that has worked in something other than iMovie, you have to take a class. Like, you have to take a class on Final Cut. You just have to unlearn the way you think. You cannot do it in the way, so if you try, and that's what I did at first, I would just try to create layers and do everything with tracks, and I put in all these extra things to keep the tracks in where they were, and you just get, and once you get into how it works, you learn to, you learn the way that it'll work well, and then it's fine. But until then, it's very painful, And so I tried to force it, and then I finally just called Steve and Mark, and I was just like, "We really need to do a class, man, because I'm dying here. I'm dying, And then so they came out and did a class for our guys, and it was great.
Okay, I'm going to have to learn it. I actually have a long form project coming up, and I think it's going to be really important because I'm getting tired of transcoding everything and blowing it up 5 times. And also I'm going to be shooting RAW and all this other stuff, and it's just going to everything. I'm going to be just buying hard drives every day.
If you're going to do a long project, definitely take a class first. Because again, you get deep into something, if you set it up wrong, it's painful. So so you really have to get it the right way. Yeah.
Probably hire a consultant.
Yeah. Have someone help you get it set up.
So I think it might be close to the end of our interview, because also actually Alex does have a hard stop. He does have other things to do besides this podcast. But what is right now, we talked about kind of your business and your profession and professional things. What are your hobbies? What are other things that are important to you?
Well, I think I'm a pretty simple person. For me, there's my work and my family, and so I spend a lot of I spend every minute that I'm not working hanging out with my kids and my wife. And it's pretty much, I don't really have a lot of other pastimes. I don't whatever. But of course I'm a little geeky about how I hang out. Like my kids and I, we play with the Oculus, and we're shooting little movies together, and we're doing, we have a lot of fun with a lot of, so that we still use the tech. I shoot, super slow-mo of my kids when they're batting, so I can give them feedback on their baseball, and that kind of.
What do you shoot that with?
Shoot it with an iPhone. It works amazing. So you just have to ignore everybody that's like giving you the stink eye, because I just walk right up to the net. Then I just push my phone into the net at just the right angle for my kids, so that and what you want to do is you frame the pitcher all the way to right to where the catcher is. You just have to get that. You have to get to the right position to do that, and then you get the kind of the whole thing. You get the whole setup and everything else for the pitch and everything, and then so then we look at them, and I get my kids ice cream, and we sit there and watch them all their, like, literally every pitch, talk about where their feet were, and where, and most of my son, my daughter, it's funny, her it's hard for me because the place that she plays doesn't have a very good place to put my phone, so my son gets more feedback. So it's but she's moving up, so she's going to move to one that has another one. But yeah, we've talked about motion capturing the kids, for technique and everything else, and so we're still, we still play with a lot of those things.
That's really cool. Well, I think it's about time to wrap up this interview. What are we at now? About an hour? Yeah, we're an hour.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's so wonderful to meet you, talk with you. I really appreciate all your time.
It's a pleasure.
I'll send you a copy of this when we get it out there.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
This is Keith Moreau signing off for TechMove.
That's Alex Lindsay from, where's he from? I guess originally from MacBreak. Really great cinematographer, really great teacher of the arts. And along with our very own Keith Moreau right here on TechMove. Long but very interesting interview. Keith, your final impressions?
My final impressions, he's a really nice guy, very accommodating. He went out of his way to locate me. We were actually texting each other, even though texts hardly worked there, because you know how that works at the shows. There's so many people.
Right.
But we managed to somehow meet at this one spot, and he was really accommodating. He didn't really, I mean, he had a lot of stuff to do. He was like speaking at different things there and visiting different things. And while right at the end of the interview, I think actually some people from Apple may have shown up to bring him somewhere, but just very, very pleased that he went out of his way to spend time with me. And I want to send this to him later, because I think I don't know how many times he's been interviewed to this level, so I think it might have been special for him too. We'll see.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, not only did I get, a lay of the land of his background and how interesting all that was, but the thing that was really fantastic as far as TechMove goes, we didn't offer him to sit down one time for that entire hour. So that was really tremendous. The set design department here at TechMove, they're really going to hear it from me, because to not give our guests a seat for an entire hour was just unheard of. So, Alex, I apologize to you. We'll be dealing through HR with our facilities department there. So, Alex,
and the craft services sucked.
Yeah.
Too. It was just pretzels and peanuts, and that was it. Nothing fancy.
And those were the ones from the airplane. So anyway, Alex, thank you again for joining us on TechMove. Keith, great interview.
Thanks.
And I think that's going to wrap it up for us as far as the IBC interviews that we have. So we're going to take a break right now. We'll come back with more of regular TechMove stuff that we need to get to. So stick around, folks. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring us to our end of our IBC coverage. Now, by the time you're listening to this, the next IBC show should be just weeks away of the 2018. I would imagine. Keith, wouldn't you agree? It's probably like hours now away.
Yeah, hours if not already having taken place.
Right. So we want to thank all of our great guests, and most of all, I want to thank you, Keith, for sacrificing and getting over to IBC and having to look at all that great gear. So thank you very much for your sacrifice.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it was actually fun. I'm going to try to go again this year. It's a fun trip.
Do you think it's a good show overall?
It's pretty much like a European clone of NAB.
Right.
It's almost exactly the same. It's the same noise level. It's the same craziness. It's the same number of vendors packed into a small place. It's packed into a huge place, but each vendor is kind of close together,
Right.
And it's got all the same. But it's in Amsterdam.
Right.
Rather than Las Vegas.
And is it, do you think it's worth it to go all the way over to Europe for this type of show?
I think it's good if you can write it off,
Right.
use it as an excuse to have a nice trip and write something off.
Uh-huh.
And then if you're European, obviously, yes.
Sure.
Because it's kind of like Amsterdam's pretty cool, because the thing about Europe is it's fairly close. Things are fairly close together.
Yeah, it's all reachable by train and stuff like that. It's pretty nice. It's really easy to get around Europe.
Yeah. After we went to Amsterdam, we took a train to France, and I did some shooting in France too.
Yeah,
because I kind of arranged the timing. So that part was cool. And then this time maybe we'll go to London or something instead. And it's just some type of short flight or train or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the train goes directly to London or not, but we'll find out.
Right.
Yeah, probably
Very-
when we get there.
Right. Then you're hitchhiking from the border on.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
But I just want to say something. I think we've broken some records about this episode for podcasting because we recorded our first.
You're probably going to utter something about like not a great record that we've broken, but go on.
Our first segment, the intro to this episode, was recorded in August 9th of 2017.
And right now we are in March of 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, we're in early March of 2018, and maybe by the time people listen to it, it'll be, early August of 2018. I don't know. Hopefully, it'll be sooner than that. I think this episode's going to be out in March. We're really shooting for that. So I want to thank everybody for their patience, and we are working. I mean, we were working on these. It just takes a while to get them out.
Right, and and so we do appreciate the TechMove Nation for sticking with us and giving us a shot at entertaining you and bringing you the latest reviews on the most archaic equipment that there is.
Yes.
So
yes. And hopefully, so I've gotten in this year-long span, or almost year-long, I've gotten quite a bit more gear. I kind of went in a buying binge at the end of last year.
As you usually do towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and so we could talk about all that new stuff I got. Like, for example, the Adamus Sumo. It's the big monitor recorder, the 19-inch monitor recorder that Adamus sells.
Did we not do a review of that when you saw that at NAB or one of those shows a few episodes ago?
I think we talked about it briefly.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really. I probably said that it was crappy, but I wound up getting one. And
right, awesome.
and then I've always wanted a Flanders Scientific calibrated monitor for real precise color correction. So I got one of those because they were running a sale on that. Basically,
and that's being used in the studio right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it hasn't been used a whole lot, but it's about to be used when I start doing some real serious projects and need some color calibration. A lot of things have been on hold because of the iMac Pro and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Xeon Crane Q2, which is kind of the large single-handed gimbal. I got one of those. Mm-hmm. And then the A7R2.
The Xeon Cranes are really excellent.
Yeah, they're actually. It's kind of amazing to me, just the technology and fit and finish of a lot of these Chinese products. These days.
Thank you.
They're just.
Thank you.
They're just getting better and better and more solid.
You're talking about me completely, but that's much appreciated. Yeah.
And then other stuff like the A7R2, which is kind of old news.
You mean R3? You mean the R3?
Yeah, sorry, the R3.
Because if you were talking about the R2, then that's really old news. But I think we at least want to try and think currently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then other things, the new Mavic Air, which I'll just a little preview. It's really awesome. It's the new DJI drone that's really tiny, and then stuff that I didn't like so much, but still got and returned, like the small HD 24-inch monitor and some DJI gimbals and some other stuff.
I will tell you a little secret. My old high school classmate just got a Mavic Air.
Oh, okay. I'm sure he loves it.
And he loves it. And it has some very neat features, of which we will talk about in our next episode. So that is, unless you've already crashed it and there's nothing to really talk about.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
That's great. Good.
Okay. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that's to tease the listeners, so they'll be very anxious to listen to the next episode.
Well, and speaking about that, Keith, I believe that, because there has, like you had mentioned, even though there a lot of time has passed between us issuing a new episode, we've always constantly been recording. So we actually do have a lot of segments in the bag right now.
Yeah.
And so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, episode 41 will be available not too long after we issue episode 40, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it'll be pretty quick. It depends on how well the rest of the recording goes today.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
which
we don't know yet.
Well, I mean, with me involved, it'll be disastrous, but nonetheless, that'll be great. All right. Hey, fantastic. I'm going to do this because we still want to be able to save some good stuff for episode 41. Let's end this this terrific episode because our listeners are just dizzy right now from all the information that they've learned because of the IBC and everything that they learned just in general from TechMove, all the things we've talked about in our intro and stuff like that. So we want to thank you very much for listening to us. Keith, of course, our fine listeners can reach us in many different ways on our website, techmovepodcast.com. I still think we have a Facebook presence somewhere. I think we've got all these other things. I don't know where they all are, but they're still all over the place.
And then there's the Patreon if people want to give us money.
That's right.
Patreon.
What is that? Is that? Oh, that's right. Can you repeat that one again for us, please?
Yeah. Let me try to find the exact URL. I think we'll have to edit this.
Well, I also know that we also have this. You can get to us through our Amazon site, right? Which isn't it techmovepodcast.com/Amazon?
That's right. If you want to just support the podcast,
you could just support the podcast. Yeah. We greatly appreciate it. The couple of little bits of money that Amazon will give to us through your purchases. It doesn't cost you anything. We just get a little percentage out of that, and so we greatly appreciate your help in that because it allows us to keep the lights on here in our extravagant studios. So we greatly appreciate it. And then Keith, do you have the Patreon information with you right now?
Yep, it's really, really simple. I'm sorry, my little doggy's just barking because Veronica's coming home, but it's
that's fantastic.
She started barking recently. It's patreon.com/techmovepodcast. So it's pretty simple.
That's great. And the fine folks can help support us and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
That's great.
They could send massive amounts of money. Either, I think we don't accept any donations under $10,000, but
Do we accept Bitcoin yet? Do we accept Bitcoin? I kind of want to get into that.
We'll accept any form of virtual money.
Excellent.
We'll accept casino poker chips, anything.
I would that would be tremendous. Fantastic. All right, great. Well, hey, folks, you've been listening to episode 40, and we want to again thank you very much for your patience in giving us this time to listen to our silly little show, and we want to thank all our great guests from IBC. Keith Moreau, thank you so much for your time and effort.
You're welcome.
I have been Rod Louie. Thank you again from all of us here at TechMove, and we will see you on our next episode. Thanks a lot, everyone.